Deep in the slums of Jiangcheng, fine rain threads slid down cobweb like power lines, splattering onto pockmarked, muddy roads. Tattered zinc sheet roofs rumbled beneath the fierce gale, like gasping beasts growling their final breaths. In front of a damp, low bungalow, an iron chimney puffed plumes of white smoke, which the frigid wind shredded apart in an instant. Creak. Shinjin pushed open the flaking wooden door and stepped inside, his whole body soaked through with icy dampness. No lights burned inside. Only faint embers smoldered in the stove, casting streaks of light and shadow across walls peeling with white plaster. He slammed the wooden door shut behind him and slid the iron bolt into place, instantly sealing out the howling wind and rain. Shinjin stood in the entryway, staring down at a plastic medicine bag clutched tight in his fist. 3 pale blue pills lay quiet inside the bag. They were the lowest grade frost source energy suppressants. To afford these 3 pills, he'd hauled heavy steel ingots at the Western Alloy factory for a full half-month. Even now, dark, unwashable rust stained his palms. Dry, scabbed blisters lined the edges of his fingernails. Yet his face was utterly calm, his eyes devoid of exhaustion, still as a stagnant pond without a single ripple. Cough, cough, hack. Ragged, tearing coughs echoed from the earthen Kong bed in the inner room. The voice was hoarse, like a leaky bellows strained to its limit. Shinjin stepped forward. A gaunt figure curled atop the dilapidated Kong. Lin Xiaolan wrapped herself in a faded, threadbare quilt. The dim firelight lent her skin an almost translucent pallor. She tried to sit up, only to double over, her whole body shaking violently from a fit of coughing. Uffed. A mouthful of blood splattered into a copper basin beside the bed. The moment the blood hit the basin's bottom, a crisp tink echoed, and it froze into tiny shards of ice in the blink of an eye. It was the Abyss Extreme Cold Toxin. Years ago, his father had died fighting beside an Abyss Rift. To retrieve his father's relics, his mother had accidentally inhaled frigid Abyss mist. The cold toxin had seeped into her bones. Every rainy day, it snaked through her meridians, freezing her blood and vital energy. Chun Jin's knuckles whitened with force, his nails digging deep into his palms. He poured a cup of warm water, gently lifted his mother's head, and fed her the pills. "Mom, take the medicine first. It'll stop the cold hurting you." Lin Xiaolan swallowed the pills with great difficulty. A faint flush returned to her icy cheeks. She grasped Chun Jin's calloused hand, her fingertips cold as raw iron. "Jean, I'm really fine. This medicine costs too much, don't buy it anymore." She forced a weak smile and brushed rainwater off his shoulders. "Have you gotten everything ready for tomorrow's awakening ceremony? Sleep early tonight. Tomorrow's a huge day." Chun Jin's throat tightened, swallowing the sharp ache rising inside him, and drew a deep, shuddering breath. "It's all prepared, Mom. Don't worry. That's good. That's good." Lin Xiaolan's tension eased, a flicker of hope glinting in her aged eyes. "My Jin's always been stronger than everyone else. You'll definitely awaken a powerful vocation tomorrow. Then our life will finally have hope. You won't have to do backbreaking labor at the alloy factory anymore." Chun Jin mustered a thin smile. "I'll come back with good news tomorrow." He helped her lie back down and tucked the quilt tight around her shoulders, waiting until her breathing softened and steadied. Creak. The courtyard gate swung open. Neighbor Sun Mei walked in carrying a steaming basin of hot water. She set the basin down roughly beside the Kong, sending scalding water splashing onto the mud floor. Shinjin looked up and saw Aunt Sun Mei's face dark as a storm cloud, her lips trembling nonstop. She stared at Shinjin, words stuck in her throat, rubbing her rough hands raw against her apron again and again. "Aunt Sun, what's wrong?" Shinjin picked up on her distress. Sun Mei glanced at Lin Xiaolan, who'd just drifted off on the Kong, then tugged Shinjin's sleeve. She lowered her voice while her chest heaved wildly. "Jean, come outside with me." The two stepped over to the stove in the outer room. Sun Mei could hold it back no longer and slammed a palm down on the cold earthen stove, rattling the coarse ceramic bowls atop it. "Those beasts at number 1 high school. They're squeezing us poor folks to death. Aunt Sun, what exactly happened?" Chun Jin's voice remained level, yet his toes dug hard into the cloth soles of his shoes. "This afternoon, I took dry rations to Xiao Yi at school. Outside the dean's office, I heard him talking to the Zhang family's men." Sun Mei's eyes reddened, her nails sinking into her own palms. That brat Zhang Kuang never even passed the pre-awakening test, but the Zhangs bribed them thick. They forcibly reassigned the school's single tuition-free awakening quota this year to Zhang Kuang. "Jean, that quota was meant for you." Shinjin said nothing. He stood motionless, the only sound the crackle of burning firewood in the stove. That quota was a benefit issued by the City Watch Army, reserved exclusively for martyrs' orphans. Sun Mei wiped tears away, her teeth grinding audibly. Your father died fighting the hordes of alien races, and all he left you was this one quota. What right do they have to steal it? Zhang Kuang's father is the secret financier of the Black Scorpion Gang. The spineless school staff dare not cross them. They erased your name straight from the list. The dean even said today that useless nobodies like you waste awakening crystals even if you unlock a vocation. Better give the spot to someone with real value. Jean, without source energy stimulation from an awakening crystal tomorrow, you'll be an ordinary person forever. What are we going to do? Sun Mei sobbed, her thin shoulders shaking violently. Zhang Kuang. Chen Jin whispered the name softly. No trace of rage crossed his features at the news. Chen Jin picked up a water cup from the stove. His hand was perfectly steady, not a single ripple disturbing the warm water inside. Yet the mud ground beneath his feet bore a 2-inch deep shoe print pressed into it by invisible force. Chen Jin turned and walked to a rickety wooden cabinet in the room's corner. Resting atop the cabinet sat a broken black iron bow, snapped clean halfway. It was the only relic his father Chen Feng had sent home before falling in battle, its frame streaked with faded dark red bloodstains. The iron bow weighed as heavy as lead. Chen Jin reached out, his fingertips brushing the frigid bowstring gently. Hum. A low, resonant hum vibrated from the string, rippling endlessly through the damp air. He gripped the broken bow's handle tight, blue veins bulging across his forearms like tangled steel wires, trembling under unsparing tension. This was the legacy his father had traded his life for, the only lifeline keeping his mother alive. Anyone who tried to take it would pay in blood. Jean, don't act recklessly. The Zhangs control both the underworld and officials across Jiangxing. We can't afford to cross them. Sun Mei looked at Chen Jin's calm face, yet an icy dread washed over her unbidden. She tugged timidly at the hem of his shirt. I know, Aunt Sunday. Chen Jin turned his head and even offered Sun Mei a faint smile. But there was no warmth in that smile. It resembled a deep pool frozen solid through and through. The quota belongs to humanity, earned with my father's life. Whoever took it will give it back. Jean, what are you planning? Don't try to steal it. Watch army guards will be posted at the school tomorrow. Sun Mei's voice shook, her knuckles white where she clutched his clothes. She feared the gentle boy she'd watched grow up would do something irreversible in a moment of blind impulse. I won't steal anything. Chen Jin slung the broken bow securely across his back. I'm merely going to take back what belongs to me. He lifted the cloth curtain and stepped into the inner room. Lin Xiaolan seemed roused by the commotion, her eyes fluttering weakly open, gazing at her son in dazed confusion. Chen Jin stepped forward, gently pulling the slipped quilt higher over her icy shoulders. His movements were slow, his voice deep and weighty, ringing clear through the empty earthen room. Mom, no one will stop me from stepping onto the awakening platform tomorrow. I will bring the suppressant medicine back to you. I promise. Dawn. Thick white fog wrapped the entire Jiangxing slums tight, like a heavy quilt. Chen Jin pushed open the courtyard gate and strode out. The broken black bow, wrapped in rough burlap, hung slung across his back, its cold iron pressing against his spine. He drew a deep breath of frigid air, spared not a single glance back at the bungalow behind him, and headed straight for Jiangxing No. 1 High School. Mud squelched thickly beneath his feet with every step. His strides were long, firm, without an ounce of hesitation. By this hour, the gates of Jiangxing No. 1 High were decked out in festive lanterns and streamers. A bright red carpet stretched from the school gate all the way to the awakening platform at the center of the sports field. Colorful balloons lined both sides, fluttering in the wind, filling the air with an air of celebration. Today marked the turning point of every senior student's fate. Dozens of poor students clustered beyond the carpet's edge, staring enviously at the rich young heirs dressed in lavish finery. A sleek black luxury sedan glided to a smooth halt at the school gate. The door swung open, and Zhang Kuang stepped out in a tailored suit, his hair slicked back in a sharp pompadour. A glittering family crest pinned to his chest made him stand out amid his entourage of lackeys. His followers shouted loud praises all around him. You'll definitely awaken in South Tier or higher close combat vocation today, young Master Zhang. Naturally, the Zhang family hunted countless rare wilderness treasures to nourish your body for this awakening. Zhang Kuang brushed dust off his suit, a haughty smirk tugging his lips. Quiet down all of you, keep a low profile. Despite his words, smug satisfaction blazed unmissable in his eyes. Just then, his peripheral vision caught Chen Jin walking silently through the crowd. Zhang Kuang's expression hardened for a split second, then twisted into a mocking sneer. He quickened his pace to block Qinjin's path. Well, look who it is, Qinjin, our school's famous slum prodigy. Zhang Kuang raised his voice on purpose, carrying his words halfway across the school gate. The surrounding students turned their heads, whispering and pointing. Heard you're still planning to join the awakening ceremony? What a joke. Zhang Kuang leaned in close to Qinjin, lowering his tone thick with contempt. You must know your quota's registered under my name now, right? You steal what belongs to others and boast about it so loudly. The Zhang family's manners are truly one of a kind. Qinjin halted in his tracks, staring coldly at him. Zhang Kuang's face darkened. He slammed a palm against a marble pillar beside them, sending plaster dust showering down. What good does sharp talk do you, Qinjin? This high martial world runs on power and connections. What does a mud-born nobody like you have to fight me with? Once I awaken my vocation, you'll spend the rest of your life wallowing in gutters watching me soar high. Qinjin did not spare him another glance, treating Zhang Kuang like thin air as he stepped past him. You. Zhang Kuang clenched his fists until his knuckles creaked, his lackeys tensing up, ready to strike. Young Master Zhang, shall we cripple this punk right now? One lackey muttered. Zhang Kuang spat viciously and snapped. No. All the city's top officials are here today, no bloodshed. Once the ceremony ends, I've endless ways to crush him to dust. Qinjin walked into the school building's lobby. A pair of gaunt hands suddenly shot out from the side, yanking him into an empty corridor corner. Jin, why are you even here? Head teacher Lu Chongfeng's hair was streaked gray, his face lined with anxious worry. His hands crumpled a stack of worn banknotes tight, his rough knuckles pale from strain. Teacher Lu. Qinjin spoke calmly. Lu Chongfeng sighed deeply, grabbed Qinjin's hand, and forced the money into his palm. Take this. It's my personal savings, not much, but enough to buy a small shop outside the city for you and your mother. Listen to me, skip the awakening ceremony today. Take your mother and leave Jiangxing at once. Lu Chongfeng lowered his voice, heavy guilt weighing his tone. I failed you. I couldn't protect your quota. The school board colludes with the Black Scorpion gang, and Zhang Kuang's father is the gang's secret mastermind. Us ordinary folk can't stand against them. If you charge onto the awakening platform, the gang's hitmen will kill you without hesitation. Lu Chongfeng tugged at Qinjin's arm, drawing faint circles in the air in a desperate bid to persuade him to flee. Qinjin stared at the banknotes in his grasp, every small bill scraped together from his teacher's frugal daily living. He drew a deep breath, a warm surge of emotion swelling in his chest. In this cold, dog-eat-dog world, Teacher Lu was one of the few who still held onto a shred of decency. Teacher Lu, take your money back. I can't accept it. Qinjin took Lu Chongfeng's hand and pressed the stack of notes firmly back into his grasp. Jin, how can you be so stubborn? Lose your life, and you lose everything. Lu Chongfeng flushed with panic, his voice trembling. Teacher Lu, that quota was bought with my father's life. My mother's waiting for me to bring back suppressant medicine to save her. Qinjin met Lu Chongfeng's gaze, his black pupils deep as the night sky. If I back down today, I'll never hold my head high for the rest of my life. Lu Chongfeng stared into Qinjin's eyes and froze on the spot. There was no wild frenzy in that gaze, no reckless teenage passion, only the dead, frigid stillness of a 10,000-year glacier. In that single second of eye contact, a cold chill crept up Lu Chongfeng's spine, and his pleading gestures faltered mid-air. He had never seen such a look in any senior student's eyes before. It belonged to a peerless killer who'd crawled out of mountains of endless corpses. Woo! A long, heavy horn blast suddenly echoed across the sports field. The awakening ceremony had officially begun. Qinjin said nothing more, bowed slightly to Lu Chongfeng, and turned to stride toward the sports field. Lu Chongfeng stood in the shadows, watching Qinjin straight, spear-like back. His lips parted, yet all that escaped was a helpless sigh. At the field's center, the massive awakening platform stood fully assembled. 3 2-man tall dark blue source awakening crystals glinted with an eerie luster beneath the sunlight. Several watch army guards in silver armor stood sentinel at the platform steps, spears in hand, faces blank and unyielding. School board directors and Jiangxing's elite dignitaries sat on the high viewing stand, chatting and laughing casually. Now we begin roll call. Step onto the platform when your name is called. An awakening official clad in white ritual robes unfurled a golden parchment scroll, his voice amplified by source energy to ring across the entire field. First candidate, Zhang Kuang. The instant the name fell, a roar of noise burst from the crowd. Zhang Kuang walked triumphantly down the red carpet, shooting a taunting glance toward the rows of poor students. He climbed the steps one by one, like a victorious general returning from war. Glory to young Master Zhang. You'll awaken a god-tier close combat vocation for sure. His lackeys cheered wildly below, whipping the crowd into a fervor. The moment Zhang Kuang stepped onto the final step and stretched out a hand to touch the awakening crystal, a violent commotion erupted from the poor students' lines. Move aside. The low voice carried no volume, yet wielded a strange power that sliced straight through the roaring chatter. The tightly packed students felt an irresistible invisible force shoving them, stumbling instinctively to split apart on both sides. Through the newly cleared pathway walked Qinjin, the broken black bow gripped in his hand, his face utterly blank. Qinjin? What's he doing? His quota got revoked. Has he lost his mind? Li. Shouts of shock rippled through the crowd, hundreds of eyes locking onto Qinjin at once. The school board elites seated on the viewing stand darkened instantly with fury. Who is this boy? Where are the security guards? How did they let him in? Disgraceful. Drag him out at once. Don't delay the auspicious hour. Several school security officers charged toward Qinjin with electric batons, hostile glares on their faces. Zhang Kuang turned to watch Qinjin walking slowly below the platform, a cruel grin spreading across his face. Qinjin, you really dare come here to cause trouble. Watch army guards are posted today. You're walking straight to your death. Qinjin ignored him entirely, his pace quickening rather than slowing. Halt. One more step forward, and we'll cripple you. The head security captain roared, swinging a high-voltage baton crackling with blue arcs hard toward Qinjin's shoulder. Qinjin's features turned cold as forged iron. The split second before the baton struck him, he shot out a hand and tore the rough burlap, wrapping off the broken bow slung across his back. The half-snapped iron bow, pitch black as ink, cast frigid, piercing glints beneath the sunlight. Qinjin gripped the bow in one hand. Vital blood thundered through his veins. He shifted his weight to one side, stamping a single foot hard enough to crack the stone paving beneath him. The ferocious aura erupting in that instant made the swarming security guards swallow hard, their charging steps grinding abruptly to a halt. Qinjin fixed his blazing gaze on the school board executives and Zhang Kuang atop the viewing stand, killing intent surging violently in his eyes. His voice boomed like thunder across the sports field. I am storming this awakening platform today. Stand in my way, and you die. Qinjin's roar reverberated endlessly over the grounds, rattling the steel support frames all around. Before the Watcher Army soldiers could fully encircle him, the four school security guards leading the charge wore menacing scowls. Pale blue electric arcs crackled atop their batons, screaming as they sliced through the air, swinging straight for his head and shoulders. You insolent brat! You dare rebel! The head guard's eyes bulged with rage. He pressed his wrist downward, intent on knocking Qinjin to his knees with a single blow. Qinjin did not flinch back. He drew a deep breath, a string of dull popping sounds echoing from every bone in his body. His feet drove into the hard tiles like steel spikes, anchored fast. The split second the two high-voltage batons were about to touch his shoulders, Qinjin dropped his stance low. Pivoting on his right foot, he coiled all the strength of his waist and abdomen into a single surge, slamming his shoulder forward without a single fancy flourish, riding a violent gust of compressed air. Boom! A heavy, muffled crash of flesh against flesh rang out, as if two stampeding wild bulls had collided head-on. The two security guards, each nearly 200 jin in weight and clad in riot armor, did not even have time to grunt before their bodies lifted clean off the ground. They arced through the air and crashed messily into two rows of benches behind them, unable to push themselves back up for a long while. That kid, what terrifying strength! Gasps rippled through the crowd of watching students, many clapping a hand over their mouths instinctively. The crushing force behind Qinjin's charge stemmed from years hauling 10,000 jin steel ingots at an alloy materials factory. No source energy fluctuations stirred, only the unbridled outpouring of pure physical power. Outrageous. Open mutiny. The school board executives on the viewing stand shot to their feet, slamming their palms hard against the tabletop and sending teacups jumping into the air. Where are the Watcher Army soldiers? Are they here just to eat their fill? Open fire. Execute him on the spot. Two soldiers armed with source energy rifles stepped forward, cold gun barrels glinting beneath the sun. Before they could chamber around, a slender figure darted across their path like a gust of wind. You cannot shoot. He's still just a boy. Lu Changfeng spread his arms wide, planting himself squarely in front of the rifle muzzles. His face flushed bright red with panic, blue veins bulging across his forehead, his whole frame trembling nonstop. Lu Changfeng, have you lost your mind? Move aside. A board member screamed from the stand. Interfering with the Watcher Army's official duties, do you wish to die alongside him? Teacher Liu, step out of the way. The soldier's tone turned icy cold. He jammed the rifle stock against Liu Changfeng's shoulder and shoved him hard. Liu Changfeng stumbled backward, nearly tumbling flat on his back. Yet he gritted his teeth, clutching tight to the hem of one soldier's uniform, shouting with every ounce of strength left in his body. Chen Jin, now's your chance, run. That single heartbeat where he risked his life to block them bought Chen Jin all the time he needed. Chen Jin bent his knees slightly, launching himself forward like a black panther descending a mountain, whipping up a ferocious gale as he dove toward the center of the platform. High up in the private VIP viewing stand, Su Qinghan, the top genius of Jiangxing City, sat poised in a leather armchair, slender fingers tapping idly against the hilt of her sword. Her once unruffled, beautiful eyes rippled with the faintest flicker of emotion for the first time. He is not throwing his life away. Su Qinghan parted her crimson lips, her voice cool and clear as spring water shattering over ice. An elder of the Su clan seated beside her shot her a look of surprise. Qinghan, this boy is merely a commoner. His eyes are untainted. Su Qinghan offered no further explanation, only tracking Chen Jin's sprinting form, the tapping motion of her fingers against the sword hilt ceasing unconsciously. In the youth's gaze, she saw no desperate madness of a cornered beast, only a near cold-blooded calm. Whoosh! A violent gust howled. Chen Jin crossed the final defensive line, his boot slams hard onto the center of the high platform. Directly before him stood the awakening stone, shimmering with pale blue source energy. Stop him! Zhang Kuang's eyes bulged with fury. He strode forward rapidly, reaching out to shove Chen Jin away. Chen Jin did not spare him so much as a sideways glance. Lifting his right hand, he brought it crashing down, riding a mountain-crushing surge of airflow. Slap! A sharp crack echoed as his palm pressed flat against the cool surface of the awakening stone. Rumble! The once stone-still awakening stone shuddered violently. The source energy trapped within roared like distant thunder. The void all around the high platform warped minutely in that split instant. What kind of source energy fluctuation is this? The awakening official was driven several steps backward by the raging air current, his white ceremonial robes flapping wildly, his face frozen in stunned bewilderment. In an instant, a blinding scarlet light burst forth from the stone. The red glow was eerie and unnatural, like fresh blood gushing straight from torn veins, swallowing the entire sports field in its radiance. Everyone below squeezed their eyes shut against the searing brightness. Even the season-high ranking officials raised their hands to shield their faces. Chaotic crimson radiance. Could this be the fabled forbidden dual-class aptitude? One board member's lips trembled, his water cup slipping from his grasp and shattering on the floor. Zhang Kuang stared fixedly at the sea of scarlet light, his fingernails digging deep into his palms, his features twisting with ugly resentment. No, impossible. What right does this lowly commoner have to stir up such an omen? He roared inwardly, jealousy burning his bloodshot eyes raw. The violent source energy spectacle lasted a full 30 seconds. Chen Jin stood at the heart of the red radiance, feeling two distinct forces clash and weave wildly inside him, before fusing into perfect harmony. Every bone, strand of flesh, and wisp of spiritual will within him underwent an earth-shattering evolution beneath the wash of source energy. The sand and wind over the sports field gradually died down. Everyone rubbed their stinging eyes, craning to peer eagerly up at the platform. The once brilliantly glowing source stone dimmed completely, slowly fading into a cold, lifeless shade of gray. Gray signified dust, the lowest, most hopeless sewer-tier occupation with zero latent potential. A gray light curtain coalesced mid-air, gradually resolving into the silhouette of a longbow. A collective gasp swept through the crowd, followed by a deathly hush. A flicker of unnoticeable disappointment crossed Su Qinghan's exquisite eyes, and her fingers resumed their soft tapping against the sword hilt. What a waste! She closed her red lips, tore her gaze away, and returned to her usual cold, aloof bearing. Zhang Kuang froze for a heartbeat, then erupted into wild, uncontrollable laughter, doubling over until tears streamed from the corners of his eyes. Ha ha! Chen Jin, I wondered what great power you possessed. You stirred up such a massive commotion, only to awaken this worthless trash class. The board executives patted their chests and heaved collective sighs of relief, sneers returning to their faces. A false alarm. You nearly gave me a heart attack. A commoner will always be a commoner. Storming the awakening platform cannot change your worthless fate. Chen Jin stood alone atop the platform, ignoring the jeers and sneers all around him, his expression calm as he stared at the dull gray stone. The awakening official rubbed his nearly blinded eyes, stepping forward with a strange look to check the final attribute projected on the stone. His Adam's apple bobbed. He wondered if he had misread it, staring blankly for a long moment before speaking in a trembling voice. This is the lowest F-tier occupation, Archer? The awakening official's shaky words hung in the air. The noise over the sports field froze completely. Tens of thousands of pairs of eyes locked onto the gray glow rising from the awakening stone, the air thick with dead silence. Half a heartbeat later, earth-shattering peals of laughter exploded outward. Ha ha, I'm dying laughing. He stormed the awakening platform just to unlock an F-tier Archer. I thought he was some hidden monstrous genius. Turns out he's nothing but a clown. One student clutched his stomach, doubled over with laughter, tears streaming down his cheeks. In a high martial world, playing an Archer, and a garbage F-tier one at that. What difference is there from walking straight to your death? A warrior's single flame slash would blow him and his bow to smithereens. He wouldn't even stand a chance to kite foes. Mockery and scorn crashed over Chen Jin in waves. The commoner students all sighed in disappointment. They had hoped Chen Jin would win some dignity for their station, yet this was the bitter outcome. Zhang Kuang stood below, arms crossed over his chest, chin tilted high, snorting coldly through his nose. Chen Jin, the quota your father traded his life for, and this sewer garbage class is all you awaken? This is the so-called confidence that made you yell stand in my way and die. Do you even deserve such arrogance? His lackeys joined in loud jeering, their words laced with vicious humiliation. The board executives on the high viewing stand settled back into their chairs. One director holding a teacup blew away the floating foam, sipping leisurely. Just a false scare. The school's reputation hasn't been ruined by this boy after all. He's merely a squishy mage who cannot withstand a single warrior punch. Finish registering him and drive him off the platform at once. The awakening official shook his head, reaching for his quill to record the result on parchment. Yet before his inked tip could touch the page, the dim awakening stone shuddered once more. A soft green light ignited from the base of the stone, swiftly wrapping the gray bow silhouette entirely. A bonded innate talent, it's lit up. Lu Changfeng clutched his robes tight beneath the stand, eyes flying wide, his knuckles white from crushing tension. The green glow condensed fully, resolving above the gray longbow into a leaf symbol representing life source energy. The awakening official glanced at the characters etched onto the stone, stunned silent for a long beat before shouting at the top of his lungs once more. Bonded innate talent successfully awakened. B-tier, self-heal. The words fell, and a split second of quiet descended over the crowd. Then louder, more raucous laughter erupted than before. B-tier self-heal? Ha ha. Is the heavens playing a joke today? A squishy F-tier archer paired with a healing talent that only triggers after taking damage? I'm rolling on the floor laughing. A warrior cuts him down in one strike. Who's he going to heal? His own corpse. The students on the field doubled over laughing, some stamping their feet hard against the ground. Zhang Kuang could barely stand upright from amusement, slapping his thigh repeatedly as he shouted up at Chen Jin. Chen Jin, you're a natural comedian. You're an archer with a healing power that only works when you get beaten up. Were you planning to charge straight into a savage beast's jaws, letting it gnaw on you while you regenerate your blood? Sharp, mocking jeers crashed over Chen Jin like a tidal wave. Back in the VIP viewing stand, Su Qinghan shifted her gaze away. The faint ripple in her beautiful eyes faded, returning to its eternal, unyielding coldness. The struggles of commoners amount to nothing more than a farce. Without profound foundational strength, how can one defy fate and rewrite their destiny? She breathed words soft as wispy smoke, then closed her eyes, paying no more heed to the commotion below. Chen Jin stood isolated on the platform, facing the jeers of tens of thousands with an expression hard as iron. No shame flickered in his eyes, nor burning resentment over the stolen awakening quota. For only he could see the massive dark gold light curtain warping and reconstructing frantically in the void before him. The system's crisp alarm blared inside his mind, detecting overwhelming external malice. Forbidden origin forcibly activated. Source energy undergoing full reconstruction. F-tier occupation, archer, reconstruction complete. Evolved into unique forbidden tier, heavy erosion bow god. B-tier talent, self-heal, reconstruction complete. Evolved into unique forbidden tier, indestructible divine physique. Heavy erosion bow god, forbidden tier traits. Eternal erosion, All damage, toxins, and debuffs you inflict are marked as permanent, unable to be cleansed or erased by any source energy. Primordial Arrow Seal. Arrow strikes deal true damage equal to the target's total defense value, ignoring all armor and barriers. Indestructible Divine Physique. Forbidden tier traits. Infinite amplification. Your constitution, vital blood, and strength automatically increase without restriction every single second. No upper limit exists. Absolute immortality. You are immune to all fatal wounds. Every time you heal after injury, your physical defense and maximum vital blood pool receive a permanent doubling amplification. The heavier the damage sustained, the faster your power surges. Shinjin stared at the dark gold divine radiance shimmering on the light curtain, his heart skipping a beat. The fingers hidden inside his sleeve trembled violently, their tips growing faintly warm. Dual forbidden powers. One granted boundless physical growth and absolute immortality. The other condemned any enemy struck by his arrows to endless, unerasable corrosion and blood loss. This was no worthless sewer tier class at all. It was an unparalleled supreme devil god masked behind the shallow guise of a B-tier self-healing archer. Shinjin, finish your quota registration. Stop disgracing yourself on the platform and get down at once. The awakening official waved a hand full of contempt, as if chasing away an annoying fly. Shinjin turned without a single change in his expression. The snapped bow slung over his back flashed a cold, dark glint beneath the blazing sun. He descended the steps one slow stride at a time. The students lining both sides automatically parted a path, their gazes mixed with pity and ridicule. Look, that's the self-healing archer who stormed the awakening platform. A self-healing archer, he set a new record for Jianqing No. One Hai's history, huh? Once he steps outside the school gates, the Zhang clan will never let him live. A mere B-tier self-heal can't stand against the clan's death assassins. Shinjin tuned all the chatter out, his footsteps steady and firm across the red carpet. When he reached Zhang Kuang's position, the young man deliberately blocked his way, his eyes dripping with teasing malice. Shinjin, I'll be waiting for you outside the gate. We'll see just how long that B-tier self-heal of yours lets you survive. A cold, faint smile tugged at the corner of Shinjin's lips as he stepped past Zhang Kuang. His eyes held the detached indifference of someone gazing down at insignificant ants, and he silently spoke to himself in his heart. Just an F-tier archer with self-heal? Heh, wait and see. This power of mine is far more than simple self-healing. A cold wind swirled dead leaves around the wall corner, muffling the harsh laughter pouring from the school gate layer by layer. Shinjin slung the black, snapped bow over his back and stepped steadily out of the school grounds. Ignoring the pointing, whispering stares behind him, he turned straight into a deserted, remote side alley. It was a dead-end alley of half-demolished ruins. Moss clung thick to the crumbling broken walls, and the air reeked of damp, rotting mildew. Shinjin halted, leaning against a mottled red brick wall, slowly exhaling a deep breath of stale air. He half closed his eyes and called out silently within his mind. System, open the status panel. The void at the center of his vision rippled, spreading concentric rings of dark gold radiance. A status panel etched with arcane runes gradually materialized in midair. Name, Shinjin. Realm, Quasi-War Apprentice, undergoing reconstruction. Occupation, Heavy Erosion Bow God, Forbidden Tier. Bonded Innate Talents, Eternal Erosion, Forbidden Tier. Indestructible Divine Physique, Forbidden Tier. Staring at the 4 dark gold characters marking the forbidden rank, Shinjin suppressed his wildly pounding heart. He lifted his right hand, dragging a fingernail lightly across the back of his left hand. Sizzle. A thin red scratch bloomed on the skin. Yet within a thousandth of a second of the wound appearing, a wisp of pale golden light flickered across his skin. The scratch did not even have time to bleed before knitting itself shut completely to the naked eye. His skin was smooth and unmarred once more, not a faint pale scar left behind. At the same time, the system's prompt echoed faintly inside his head. Self-healing complete. Detected host injury recovery. Absolute immortality activated. Physical strength permanently increased by 1. Maximum vital blood permanently increased by 1. A warm current surged forth from deep within his spinal column, flooding every limb and meridian. Shinjin clenched his right fist. A dull, muffled pop echoed faintly in the air, the sound of atmospheric pressure shifting from his sudden spike in strength. And this was only a trivial, superficial scrape. How staggering would the amplification be if he sustained a fatal wound and healed back from the brink of death? Shinjin followed the panel's text to read the full descriptions of his 2 forbidden talents. Eternal erosion. All debuffs you inflict, including but not limited to bleeding, corrosion, deadly poison, slow, weakness, and freeze, are set to permanent duration, unable to be dispelled by any means. Indestructible divine physique. 1. Passive growth. No dedicated cultivation required. Constitution, strength, spirit, and vital blood rise automatically every second with no upper cap. 2. Absolute immortality. All fatal damage is nullified. Every recovery from near-death state doubles your total physical durability and maximum vital blood volume outright. Chen Jin's knuckles blanched white from his crushing grip, his bones letting out crisp popping cracks in the damp air. This is forbidden power. His murmur drifted away down the dead-end alley. With the twin forbidden powers awakened, all the rules, order, and powerful clans of the high martial world meant nothing but worthless trash to him now. Others risked their lives in brutal battles and burned endless resources to grow stronger. He only needed to breathe to surge in power. Crack. A string of faint popping bursts suddenly echoed from within his body as the density of every bone in his frame skyrocketed wildly. Source energy seeped out of the void like surging tides, slipping soundlessly into every single cell of his flesh. The muscles in his thighs contracted slightly before restructuring into far tighter, denser fibers, doubling his explosive strength in an instant. His five senses sharpened to an unparalleled degree. He could even catch the faint patter of fallen leaves striking puddles on the street one block over. He grew stronger with every passing second. Closing his eyes, he sank deep into bliss, intoxicated by the endless wellspring of power surging through his veins at all times. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Right then, the beat-up old cell phone in his pocket vibrated violently, spewing scratchy static noise that sent a numb tingling up his thigh muscles. Frowning, Chen Jin pulled the cracked screen junk phone out of his trousers. The caller ID read, "Fatty." He barely pressed the answer button before lifting the phone to his ear. Ragged, labored gasps flooded the receiver at once. Howling wind mixed with the scratch of sneakers scuffing gravel. His friend was clearly sprinting for his life. "Ajin, huff, pant, where are you?" Wang Fugue's voice trembled faintly, raw and hoarse, edged with the brink of total collapse. The gale roaring through the line nearly drowned out every word he spoke. Chen Jin's brows lifted faintly, his fingers tightening harder around the phone. "Fatty, I'm at the back gate of number 1 high school. What's happened?" "Run. You have to run." Wang Fugue broke into a violent coughing fit, sounding as if he would hack up his own lungs. "Cough, cough. Those beasts, they're not human." Chen Jin's gaze turned icy cold in an instant, a roiling black storm faintly swirling deep within his pupils. "Speak clearly. Who's acting like animals?" "Zhang Quan. That bastard Zhang Quan." Wang Fugue gasped for air between sobs, his voice thick with tears. "He never went to the hospital. He brought the Black Scorpion Gang's death soldiers. They're already at your house. They said they're taking Aunt Lin to use as leverage against you. Seeking death." Two cold words slipped off Chen Jin's tongue. His surging source energy rumbled low within his body at the spike in his rage. A broken red brick at his feet crumbled silently into crimson dust beneath his soul. That woman was his uncrossable bottom line. Lin Xiaolan was the only person he had left to care for in this world. "Ajin, don't go back." The second in command of the Black Scorpion Gang's leading them. "He's a ruthless monster." Wang Fugue screamed hoarsely over the wind, static tearing through the phone's speaker. "They've blocked the alley entrance, laid a trap waiting for you to walk right in. Hurry to the City Defense Army for help, or flee the city. As long as we live, there will be chances to strike back." Chen Jin spun on his heel and strode out of the rubble-strewn alley. His steps carried heavy weight, leaving sharp, distinct indentations stamped into the hard pavement with every stride. The black storm swirling in his pupils solidified into frigid killing frost. He looked every inch a peerless demonic blade drawn from its sheath. The broken black bow slung over his back wisped thin, barely visible tendrils of black death aura beneath the blazing midday sun. It was an omen of slaughter. How many men did they bring? Chen Jin's voice held zero fluctuation, cold and precise as a precision machine. "I don't know. At least a dozen, all armed to the teeth." Wang Fugue wailed loudly on the other end, his footsteps growing faster and more frantic. "Ajin, listen to me, run." Chen Jin asked no more questions, only lifting his gaze toward the slum district in the distance. A heavy black thundercloud had drifted across the sky without him noticing, swallowing the bright sunlight bit by bit. A storm was coming. The wind howled louder through the receiver, mixed with the rattle of leaves and gravel battering the microphone. Wang Fugui sounded like he was sprinting in blind terror, his words broken apart by the gale, yet he still roared hysterically. Ajin, it's too late. That bastard Zhang Kuang's men are already at your place. Run away fast. Crack. A faint brittle snap came from the old cell phone clutched in Qinjin's hand. The plastic casing split open with fresh cracks under the sudden iron vice of his tightened fingers. He said not another word, hanging up and shoving the phone back into his pocket. He turned his face toward the slum district. The black storm swirling in his pupils solidified into frigid killing frost. He looked every inch a peerless demonic blade drawn from its sheath. Touching his mother was the same as tearing his heart out. Boom. Qinjin slammed his foot hard against the solid pavement. The floor tiles shattered into countless shards that sprayed outward in all directions from the force of the blow. His figure blurred into a black streak, a shrill whistling cutting the air as he vanished deep into the alley in the blink of an eye. He did not bother hailing a vehicle. His current speed far outmatched any source-powered motorcycle weaving through the steel ruins of the city. Frigid wind howled past his ears, whipping the hem of his clothes raw. Every inhale rumbled in his chest like a bellows working overtime. The muscles in his legs contracted and expanded non-stop as he sprinted, unleashing terrifying explosive momentum. Detected host high-speed sprinting. Immortal indestructible passive continuously activating. Constitution +1, Vitality +2, Agility +1. Constitution +1, Vitality +2, Agility +1. The system's alert tones flooded his mind non-stop, like unceasing pouring rain. Qinjin could feel his strength rising with every single step he took. The concrete road beneath his feet could no longer bear the force. Spiderweb cracks spread outward instantly wherever his soles landed. His speed rocketed to an astonishing peak in barely 30 seconds. Buildings and pedestrians lining the streets blurred into indistinct streaks in his field of vision. The wind sliced across his cheeks like sharp knives, yet it could not even nick his skin. My body, heavier, yet far stronger. Qinjin whispered into the wind, his words swallowed whole by the gale. The shift came from the rapid restructuring and compression of his bone density and muscle fibers. He could feel his blood surging through his veins, roaring like vast rivers in flood. Heat. Scalding warmth exploded inside every cell of his body. The boundless vitality granted by the immortal, indestructible effect scoured his flesh relentlessly. His heart hammered heavily, each powerful throb pumping endless life force to every limb and organ. An ordinary person's lungs would rupture after running several kilometers at full tilt, yet Qinjin's breaths only grew deeper and steadier. The cold air he drew in circulated through his meridians and converted straight into power. In a mere 5 minutes, he had crossed half the urban district. The slum district loomed into view far ahead. Pitch-black storm clouds churned overhead, swallowing the last sliver of sunlight and dimming the whole world. Qinjin landed atop the roof of a low-tile house, his form melting seamlessly into the roof's shadow. Glancing down from his vantage point, his target was the run-down bungalow that belonged to his family. The rickety wooden fence gate had been brutally kicked flat, splintered into broken planks scattered across the ground. A sleek black luxury source-powered motorcycle sat parked in the yard, its scarlet headlights glaring harshly in the dim light. Old woman, sign this voluntary transfer waiver and liability agreement if you know what's good for you. A vicious shout echoed from the courtyard. Save yourself a beating, you know young Master Zhang's temper. A bald, burly brute dressed in black slammed a stack of papers hard down onto a weathered stone table. Cough, cough. You stole my son's quota, and now you dare demand we sign this. Lin Xiaolan's weak yet unyielding voice drifted out of the house, accompanied by racking, pained coughs. Over my dead body. I will never put my signature to this. Over your dead body? Old woman, have you lost your mind? A young gangster clutching a glinting mountain blade let out a mocking snort beside him. You don't get a choice. Big mouth, drag the old hag out here. Young Master Zhang said we must get that signature today. Second brother, what if she refuses to sign no matter what? The gangster nicknamed Big Mouth hesitated, leering maliciously toward the inner room. Young Master Zhang said Qinjin awakened a grade B self-healing ability. If the old woman dies, how are we supposed to threaten him? Nonsense. Grade B self-healing's nothing special. We cripple the boy's limbs, and every time he heals we'll hack him again. The bald brute known as Second Brother sneered, bearing a set of yellowed teeth. As for the old woman, we just need to keep her barely breathing. Move. Got it. Big Mouth let out an ugly cackle, drawing an iron rod from his waist and stepping toward the inner room. Hold on, Big Mouth. Second Brother called him to a halt. shifting into a more comfortable slouch on the stone bench. We can't afford to anger young Master Zhang. If we head back empty-handed without that signature, we'll disgrace the entire Black Scorpion gang. Disgrace? I'd like to see who dares laugh at us. What's Qinjin anyway? Just a worthless grade F archer awakener. Second brother spat on the ground, his face twisted with contempt. A grade F archer with a self-heal power. What a joke. I could snap his neck with one hand. Exactly. He even forced his way onto the awakening platform, acting like some big shot. Big Mouth fawned and patted the iron rod in his grip. Second brother, when the kid gets back, can I land the first blow with this rod? Sure, just don't beat him to death. Do whatever you want with him. Second brother waved a hand, his gaze cold and cruel. Go drag that sickly old woman out. Don't waste our time. Beneath the shadows, Qinjin watched the whole scene in silence. No flicker of anger crossed his face. He was as still as a lifeless stone statue. But his pupils had contracted into the most dangerous pinprick slits, endless abyssal darkness churning and collapsing deep within his black irises. He slowly stretched out his right hand and unslung the cloth-wrapped broken bow from his back. Rip! The rough linen cloth tore apart at his casual tug, shreds fluttering away on the wind. The ink-black, half-snapped iron bow glinted with an eerie, bone-chilling cold light in the dim twilight. From the rough leather pouch at his waist, he drew a rusted iron arrow. The gray mist of eternal corrosion crept slowly across the arrowhead, eating away at the air to trail thin, wispy black smoke. His gaze locked onto the grinning gangsters filling the yard, a frigid, thin smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. He steadily channeled strength into his arms, drawing the lead-heavy broken bow inch by inch. The taut creak of the bowstring carried faint yet clear over the howling cold wind. Zhang Kuang, since you're so eager to throw your life away, I'll grant your wish. 为了让这一段新闻的高潮决战更加灵感，沙发节奏更为紧凑。为按照你的最新要求，将单位序号那本书虽明显少于15-20个的鸡蛋段落，如翻拍真正的单式对白，系统素质提升或过档的画面转折，与邻近同样片段的新进行无缝合并。合并后的排版如下 ：Boom. Qinjin crushed the splintered wooden fence gate beneath his boot. He pushed the ajar yard gate open with an empty expression, stepping into his family's small courtyard wrapped in the cold mist of late autumn. Chaos greeted his eyes at once. Laundered clothes hung strung on ropes had been torn down, trampled all over with muddy footprints. Aunt Sun Mei slumped on the damp ground, one side of her face swollen badly, a streak of half-dried blood crusted at the corner of her mouth. An old wooden armchair dragged out from the house sat in the center of the yard. Zhang Kuang lounged arrogantly atop it, one leg crossed over the other, twirling a stack of papers stamped with red thumbprints between his fingers. At the sight of Qinjin walking in, Zhang Kuang spat a grass stem from his mouth, amusement flickering in his eyes like a cat toying with a trapped mouse. Qinjin, you cowardly turtle, finally crawled out of your hiding hole. Zhang Kuang flapped the liability agreements to make them rustle loudly. I thought awakening that garbage grade F archer power had you cowering in a sewer too scared to show your face. The dozen gangsters around him burst into raucous laughter, whistling crudely. Young Master Zhang, the brat still carrying that busted bow on his back. A self-healing archer parading around with a bow. Isn't that embarrassing? The bald brute's second brother leaned against the doorframe, flipping a foot-long mountain blade in his palm, full of scorn. Qinjin ignored their noisy jeers. His eyes swept the whole yard before settling on Aunt Sun Mei. Covering her swollen cheek, Sun Mei's face flooded with panic the second she spotted him, struggling to scramble to her feet. Xiaojin, run. They brought blades. Go fetch the city defense army at once. Run? Does he look like he's going anywhere today? Zhang Kuang let out a cold laugh and stood up, slamming the stack of waiver papers hard against the stone table. Qinjin, kneel down. Sign this document voluntarily forfeiting your quota, and kowtow 3 times to me. If you refuse, this small courtyard will be the burial ground for you and your mother. Inside the house, Lin Xiulan let out a fit of weak, helpless coughing at the commotion. The broken coughs sounded thin and pitiful carried on the cold wind. Second brother twisted his neck, leering maliciously toward the inner room. Old woman, you hear that? Tell your boy to sign fast, or I'll march in there and send you straight to the afterlife right now. Qinjin's features sharpened like a blade, a metallic bloodlust aura rolling off his body that kept all living things far away. He said not a single word, not even sparing Zhang Kuang a sideways glance. Beneath the gangster's watchful stares, Chen Jin took long, steady strides over to Sun Mei. He bent slightly, calloused hands reaching out to lift her gently to her feet. "Aunt Sun, go sit in the corner. Leave everything here to me." Chen Jin brushed mud off her shoulders, his voice soft, yet carrying unshakable authority. Sun Mei stared at his calm face, her lips trembling, before she obediently shuffled to the corner of the yard. Zhang Kuang burned with rage at being completely ignored, the thick flesh on his cheeks twitching violently. He slammed his right hand down hard on the stack of wafers atop the stone table, his fingernails turning blue from the crushing force. "Chen Jin, I'm talking to you. Are you deaf or blind? Big Mouth. Teach him a lesson. Make him learn some manners." On it, the gangster Big Mouth grinned ferociously, gripping his iron rod and stomping toward Chen Jin with a wide-legged swagger. "Kid, young Master Zhang's talking to you. Why the brooding silent act?" He lifted the iron rod high above his head, swinging it hard toward Chen Jin's shoulder with a sharp, whistling rush of air. Chen Jin remained silent. When the rod was only half a foot away from his shoulder, he did not even blink an eye. He twisted his body sideways, snatching the grip of the broken black bow behind his back in an iron vice grip. Rip! The broken bow slid free, a shrill piercing crack tearing through the courtyard air. Big Mouth never even registered what had happened. Only a black blur flashed before his eyes, followed by a dull crunch of splintering bone from his wrist. Crack! Ah! Big Mouth let out a shrill scream, the iron rod flying out of his grasp. He clutched his broken wrist and stumbled backward 7 or 8 steps, his face drained deathly pale. Chen Jin stood rooted to the spot, one hand loosely holding the bow, steady as an immovable boulder. This surging strength had built up second by second along his sprint, stacked non-stop by his immortal indestructible passive. "Attack! All of you, break his legs." Zhang Kuang panicked completely, screaming hysterically at his gang. He stumbled a step backward instinctively, colliding with the wooden armchair that scraped against the stone with a harsh squeal. A murderous glint flashed in Second Brother's eyes. He raised his mountain blade high, hacking down toward Chen Jin's skull with a shrill whistle of cutting wind. Damn it! A worthless grade F awakener dares draw blades on the Black Scorpion gang. The dozen armed gangsters swarmed forward all at once, their clubs and blades blocking every single escape route Chen Jin had. Chen Jin wasted no words. He reached back into his tattered leather quiver and drew another rusted iron arrow. Knocking the arrow to the string, he poured all his strength into his arms, drawing the lead-heavy broken bow until it curved like a full moon, an aura of lifeless desolation washing outward from its black frame. The black mist of eternal corrosion coiled silently around the arrowhead. Chen Jin stood cold and unflinching in the center of the yard, facing blades and clubs swinging at him from every direction without the slightest tremor in his gaze. He did not even lift a hand to block the weapons bearing down on his body. His arms dipped slightly, the full moon drawn black bow tilting, the arrowhead tracing a perfect black arc through the air. The moment the broadswords wielded by Bald's second brother and more than a dozen thugs were merely an inch away from him, Chen Jin released his fingers. Hum! A low, ear-splitting twang of bowstring instantly drowned out all the commotion in the courtyard. The rusted iron arrow, wreathed in thin wisps of black smoke, turned into a streak of black lightning, piercing through the swirling flurry of sword blades in the blink of an eye. It left no time for anyone to react. The shockwave churned up by the arrow rent the surrounding blade glows clean apart. Second Brother's charging figure froze rigid mid-stride, the broadsword in his hand hanging suspended in the air. Zhang Kuang stood beside the stone table, his once smug, sneering face locking up completely. That cold, rust-streaked black arrowhead rested only half an inch from his throat. Black mist coiled around the tip, stinging the skin of his neck and drawing a thin thread of blood. The instant that bead of blood welled up, it turned jet black and began rotting its way down his neck. In the courtyard, the clubs and blades of the dozen thugs hung frozen above Chen Jin's head and shoulders, unable to fall another inch. All it would take was one tiny twitch of Chen Jin's fingertips, and Zhang Kuang's throat would be pierced straight through. Sweat dripped from Zhang Kuang's forehead, splattering onto the liability waiver and soaking a huge patch of paper in an instant. Chen Jin, don't do anything reckless. Zhang Kuang's voice shook uncontrollably, his teeth chattering loudly. This is the jurisdiction of Jiangxing No. 1 High School. If you kill me, the Zhang clan and the Black Scorpion gang will dismember you and your mother into 1,000 pieces. Chen Jin stared at him coldly, his eyes devoid of the slightest flicker of emotion, calm as an emotionless executioner. Too much pointless chatter. You stole my spot, and dared to lay hands on the people close to me. This arrow sends you to your grave." The bowstring hummed, unleashing a shrill whistling crack as the arrow surged forth carrying overwhelming power. The black stream of light tore through the mist hanging in mid-air, its wake whipping fallen leaves off the ground and flinging them to either side. "Stop your trickery and break this for me." Gritting his teeth, Zhang Kuang hastily drew the storm great sword at his waist, slamming it crosswise before his chest. Pale blue wind origin energy shimmered across the broad blade, meant to block the arrow head-on. Clang! A deafening crash of metal exploded through the small courtyard, making the thugs' eardrums throb with pain. Yet the iron arrow was not sent flying as they'd expected. Instead, the storm greatsword that Zhang Kuang took such pride in surged violently the moment impact struck. A domineering, brute force flooded his arms through the blade in a violent surge. Crack! A dull pop echoed from the joints of both of Zhang Kuang's arms. The webbing of his palms split open at once, oozing fresh blood. "My greatsword!" Zhang Kuang let out a yell, no longer able to grip his weapon. The sword flew from his grasp, spinning several times through the air before slamming deep into the blue bricks of the courtyard wall. The entire brick wall split into a web of tiny cracks from the collision. The arrow, unable to withstand such terrifying force after deflecting the sword, detonated with a thunderous blast mid-air. Countless sharp shards sprayed outward like scattering flower petals. Splat! One jagged fragment skimmed past Zhang Kuang's cheek, carving a thin gash roughly an inch long across his right side. A thin trail of blood trickled slowly down his face. Huff! Zhang Kuang reached up to touch his right cheek, staring at the crimson stain on his fingertips as he gasped for air. His legs went weak, and he nearly collapsed to the ground. But when he realized it was only a superficial scrape, the terror gripping his heart vanished entirely. "Ha ha ha ha!" Wiping the blood off his face, Zhang Kuang burst into hysterical laughter. He pointed at Qinjin, laughing until tears welled in his eyes. "Qinjin, I thought that arrow of yours was some deadly weapon, yet all it can do is nick my skin. Trash F tier ability stays trash, you can't even aim straight." He roared arrogantly, straightening his posture once more. The surrounding thugs all exhaled in relief and joined in mocking jeers. "Haha, young Master Zhang is unbeatable. That kid's lousy bow's nothing but a prop. Second brother, he's out of arrows. Charge together and cripple him." Big Mouth shouted from the rear, grinding his teeth with rage. Bald's second brother grinned savagely as he picked up his broadsword from the ground, cruelty blazing in his eyes. But Qinjin merely stood rooted to the spot, not drawing a second arrow. He fixed Zhang Kuang on the stone steps with a cold gaze, as if staring at a corpse. "Finished laughing?" Qinjin's voice carried not a trace of warmth. "Finished? Today I'll beat you too." Zhang Kuang's words died unfinished as his expression twisted abruptly. A searing, bone-gnawing, burning agony erupted out of nowhere from the small cut on his right cheek. It felt as though a ravenous, blood-sucking bug was burrowing relentlessly into his flesh through the wound. Sizzle! A thin wisp of black smoke crept silently out of the gash. The blood that had already begun to clot lost all control in an instant. Gush! A flood of blood surged from the wound like an open faucet. The crimson fluid soaked his tailored suit and splattered onto the dirt, staining the soil an eerie black red. What's happening? Why won't my blood stop pouring?" Panic seized Zhang Kuang. Frantically, he pulled a precious vial of pale green healing potion from his coat, crushed it in his fist, and dumped all the liquid over his wound. The green healing origin energy flared to life for barely a heartbeat before the black smoke clinging to the wound swallowed it whole. If anything, the smoke grew thicker, nourished by the medicinal energy. The wound did not close. Instead, rot spread across half his face. Skin and flesh festered and turned black, bearing the white bone of his jaw beneath. Permanent effect of eternal corrosion confirmed. Qinjin thought silently, tracking his system panel where the continuous damage alerts flashed. There existed no antidote, no origin energy capable of purifying it. Only laws surpassing taboo god tier power could reverse it. Otherwise, this wound would bleed and rot forever, until Zhang Kuang's health hit zero entirely. No, my face. My face is melting. Zhang Kuang let out an inhuman shriek and tossed aside the empty potion vial. He tumbled off the stone steps, thrashing wildly across the muddy courtyard. "Second brother, help me. Stop the bleeding, hurry." Clutching his right cheek tight, blood sprayed non-stop through the gaps between his fingers onto the stone table. His body contorted into a grotesque, twisted shape on the ground, racked with agony. Bald's second brother and the dozen thugs stood utterly dumbfounded. They wanted to rush over and help, yet no one dared step near the sight of half his face rotted black and stripped down to bone. The deathly cold aura radiating from the black smoke sent chills racing over every inch of their bodies. Qinjin, what black magic have you cast? Second brother's hand trembled around his broadsword, his feet shuffling backward involuntarily. If the young master dies here, the Zhang clan will flay you alive and tear out your tendons. Qinjin did not spare him a single glance. He strode slowly to the guest chair and slung his broken bow back over his shoulders. Get out. Qinjin spoke only one word, yet it crashed into the hearts of the Black Scorpion Gang thugs like a heavy sledgehammer. Overjoyed to escape with their lives, the men scrambled to lift the writhing Zhang Kuang and stumbled pell-mell out of the courtyard. Only Zhang Kuang's horrifying wails lingered, echoing deep within the dim slum alleyways. Clutching his heavily bleeding, blackening face, he rolled back and forth across the ground screaming like a slaughtered pig. His nails dug deep into the mud, snapping clean off from the unbearable torment, leaving his hands soaked in blood. The pain's killing me. Why won't the blood stop? What cursed poison did you put on me? Zhang Kuang's shrill screams reverberated endlessly through the courtyard, scraping against every listener's eardrums. Collapsed in the mire, he dug his 10 fingers hard into the ground, gouging small craters into the soft mud, dark red blood seeping from beneath his broken fingernails. Bald's second brother stared at the young master writhing at his feet, half his face already rotten away, and his heart skipped a beat with terror. Second brother, what do we do now? A thug clutching an iron pipe trembled from head to toe, his grip shaking like a sieve around the weapon. What are you panicking for? He's alone, and his bow's broken, cripple him. Bald's second brother gritted his teeth, the scar slicing across his face writhing with malice like a giant centipede coiled on his skin. He raised his broadsword, pointing the blade straight at Qinjin's chest. All of you charge. Flay him alive for me. The force of 5 or 6 burly thugs surged forward at the order, swinging steel pipes and broadswords as they bore down on Qinjin with bared teeth, intending to overwhelm him with sheer numbers. Qinjin stood calmly beside the stone table, his features utterly unruffled. Instead of stepping back to dodge the steel pipe swinging straight for his head, he took a deliberate step forward. Suicidal fool, he's not even drawing his bow. A thug's eyes lit up with glee as he hefted his steel pipe and swung it with full force at Qinjin's crown. Qinjin raised his left arm and met the heavy pipe head-on with bare flesh. Clang! The pipe slammed hard against his forearm with a shrill metallic ring. No sickening crunch of splintered bone followed as they'd expected. Instead, the solid steel pipe bent sharply from the recoil off Qinjin's skin. Not even a scratch marred the surface of his arm. How is this possible? Are your arms cast from iron? Light. The thug's eyes bulged wide, his hands numbed by the backlash, nearly dropping the pipe entirely. A cold smirk tugged at Qinjin's lips. His right fist churned up a violent gust of wind as he drove it straight into the man's shoulder. Crack! The crisp sound of shattering bone cut clear through the courtyard. The thug did not even have time to scream. Every bone in his right arm snapped piece by piece, and his body went flying backward like a snapped kite. The sheer weight of the punch knocked 2 more thugs standing behind him flat to the ground as well. Detected host voluntarily absorbing impact. Indestructible physique undergoing refinement. Defense +5, bone density +3, vitality +10. Qinjin felt the warm current surging far more fiercely within his body, every grind of his bones thrumming with immense power. Charge! Hack him to pieces. Bald's second brother's eyes bulged with rage as he joined the fray personally, his broadsword slashing a streak of black blade light through the air. Qinjin still did not retreat. With a quick sidestep, his frame stood like a towering iron tower as he charged straight into the swarm of thugs. He abandoned the archer's hit-and-run ranged tactics entirely, fighting more ferociously than the most brutal heavy armored warrior. Boom! Qinjin snatched an iron pipe swinging toward him, then threw a crushing reverse punch that dislocated a thug's jaw entirely. Blood mixed with splintered white teeth sprayed a glaring red arc through the air. Monster, this guy's a monster. The remaining thugs watched their companions collapse one after another with broken bones, and their resolve crumbled completely. Their legs turned limp as noodles, their hands too weak to grip their blades, and they shrank backward nonstop. Qinjin did not give chase. He slowly turned his head to look at Zhang Kuang, still writhing in agony on the ground. By now, the rot spreading across Zhang Kuang's right cheek had crawled all the way down his neck. His once fair skin was charred black, reeking of sickening decay, his flesh melting away inside the wound. Eternal corrosion ongoing. Target HP 10, HP 10. In Chun Jin's vision, the red health bar floating above Zhang Kuang's head had drained 2/3 of its length, falling irreversibly by the second. Second brother, save me. I'm so cold. Zhang Kuang's voice turned hoarse as an 80-year-old elder, his eyes rolling back in his head, frothy blood pouring endlessly from his mouth. His nails dug hard into the cracks of the stone table, snapping all 10 fingertips clean off from excruciating pain, leaving his hands dripping red. Young master. Hold on, young master. The sight sent Bald's second brother's soul flying with terror. He could not muster the courage to glance at Chen Jin even once, rushing forward in long strides to hoist Zhang Kuang onto his back. Hurry, get the young master to the hospital. Second brother screamed frantically, and the uninjured thugs scrambled to yank open the car doors. They roughly shoved Zhang Kuang into the black luxury sedan before slamming the door shut with a heavy thud. The car lurched backward with a shrill squeal of tires, crashing into a corner of the courtyard wall, then slammed on the gas and fled the scene in utter disarray. Thick exhaust fumes dissipated into the cold rain, and the noisy slum alley fell silent once more. Chen Jin stood in the wreck-strewn courtyard, staring at blood puddles and overturned clothes racks, his gaze cold as solid ice. He slowly stretched out his right hand and slung the half-broken black iron bow back over his shoulders. Huff! He exhaled a long stream of frigid air, calming the raging origin energy churning inside him. Turning around, Chen Jin strode to the doorway and gently pushed open the peeling wooden door. A thick medicinal scent mixed with a faint chill hung in the air inside the room. Lin Xiaolan sat perched on the edge of the heated brick bed, her gaunt frame propped upright. Her wrinkled hands trembled violently from fright. When she saw Chen Jin walk in completely unharmed, the tears she'd been holding back spilled free down her cheeks. Xiao Jin, are you hurt? All those men outside just now. Lin Xiaolan clutched Chen Jin's calloused hand tight, her fingertips cold as raw iron. Mom, I'm fine. I chased all those people away. Chen Jin pulled the sliding quilt higher over his mother's shoulders to cover her icy skin, his voice soft and gentle. Lin Xiaolan stared at Chen Jin, then glanced out at the damaged courtyard wall, tears streaming nonstop down her face as her shoulders shook violently. Her eyes brimmed with unmasked worry and helplessness. Jin, you've injured the Zhang clan's young master this badly. They will definitely mobilize the full power of their entire clan to seek revenge. What are we going to do? Watching his mother's tear-streaked face and her thin shoulders shaking nonstop, Chen Jin stepped forward. He spread his broad palm and gently rested it on Lin Xiaolan's gaunt shoulders. The steady, blazing warmth seeped from his skin, instantly calming the panic-stricken elderly woman. Mom, no matter what disaster comes, I'll bear it all. Chen Jin bowed his head slightly, meeting her eyes brimming with worry, and forced a faint grin. His gaze held nothing but peace and self-assurance, like an impenetrable iron wall capable of withstanding violent storms. Post-respiration detected. Indestructible immortal physique activated. Constitution +2, Spirit +1. Constitution +2, Spirit +1. The system's soft prompt echoed gently inside his mind. With every even, steady breath, Chen Jin's chest rose and fell faintly. Source energy surged endlessly into his body through every pore, solidifying his frame and radiating a reassuring, masculine aura. Feeling the warmth from her son's broad hand, Lin Xiaolan's racing heart gradually steadied. Jin, are you truly unharmed? All that commotion outside just now, Lin Xiaolan clutched Chen Jin's hand and examined him closely. Only after confirming not a single hair on his head was harmed did she heave a long sigh of relief. Mom, I'm fine. Those thugs only look terrifying. They're all flash with no substance, easy to beat down. Chen Jin pulled the quilt higher over his mother, tucking it securely around her shoulders. You just took your medicine and need rest. Aunt Sun sustained minor injuries. I'll go apply ointment for her. All right, go check on Aunt Sun at once. We owe her everything for what happened earlier. Lin Xiaolan's eyes drooped with exhaustion, and she drifted into a deep slumber lulled by the medicine's warmth. Out in the outer room, Sun Mei sat beside the stove, pressing a cold, damp towel to her swollen, bruised cheek. When she saw Chen Jin walk out, she gritted her teeth and forced a strained smile. Jin, I'm all right, just superficial scrapes. Did you really chase all the Zhang men off? They're gone. They won't dare come back for a long while. Chen Jin rummaged through the cabinet and pulled out a box of bruise salve, handing it over. Aunt Sun, spread this ointment on your cheek. The swelling will fade by tomorrow. Thank you, dear boy. Sun Mei took the salve, staring at Chen Jin's unnervingly calm expression, cold sweat prickling her palms. Jin sat before the earthen stove, silently watching the embers in the firebox flicker and die down. He knew crystal clear in his heart. After suffering such a crushing loss, the Zhang clan and the Black Scorpion gang would never let this matter rest. To fully cure his mother's abyss cold toxin, far higher grade source energy potions were required, potions that cost an astronomical sum of federal credits. And to weather the coming storm, he had to grow far stronger. Money, resources, power, none of these can be obtained within the city walls. Jin tapped his knee in a steady rhythm with his fingers. Since the school had stripped him of his awakening quota, there was no longer any reason for him to abide by the rules and act like a docile student. The only path to rapid wealth lay in the wilderness zone outside the city. The wilderness teemed with ferocious beasts corrupted by abyss miasma. Slay them, and you could extract their crystal cores. Even the most ordinary Tier 1 mutant beast core sold for over 1,000 federal credits on the black market. The talent-heavy armor corrosion bow god truly shines in the wilderness terrain. It's a god-tier farming tool for mowing down beasts. Having made up his mind, Jin stood and began gathering his gear. He unslung the broken bow from his back and wiped it meticulously with oilcloth. Next, he dragged a tattered canvas sack out from under the bed, stuffing several hard compressed biscuits and a canteen of cold water inside. Only a dozen regular arrows remained at home. Yet he knew, with eternal corrosion, even a rusty nail would inflict unending torment so long as it pierced a beast's skin. Bang! The shabby courtyard gate was suddenly slammed open with a full-body tackle. Heavy gasps filled the air as a stocky figure stumbled headlong into the house. Jin! Wang Fuguei was drenched head to toe in sweat, his clothes pasted stickily to his skin. He clutched 2 white medicine bottles tight to his chest. His shoe soles were caked in yellow mud from sprinting all the way, leaving a trail of messy footprints across the floor. Jin's brows drew tight, stepping forward to steady the staggering fat man. Fatty, what's the panic for? Catch your breath first. Huff, puff, disaster struck. Wang Fuguei seized Jin's arm, his nails digging deep into his clothes, gasping raggedly. Sweat the size of soybeans dripped relentlessly from his forehead, his face flushed bright red with panic. He slammed the 2 healing medicine bottles onto the table, his voice trembling uncontrollably. I just snuck around the back of City No. 1 hospital. The Zhang men have sealed off the entire hospital gate. Here, this top-tier hemostatic powder I stole from the apothecary. Take it and keep it safe. Jin glanced at the 2 bottles, his demeanor still unruffled. He patted the fat man's back gently to calm his breathing. What about Zhang Kuang? Wang Fuguei swiped sweat from his face, his bulky frame shuddering, terror blazing in his eyes. He gripped Jin's arm so tight his knuckles whitened, his shrill voice echoing through the tiny outer room. Jin, holy hell. They rushed Zhang Kuang to the intensive care unit at City No. 1 hospital, and even the best healers in the city can't stop his bleeding. The Zhangs are hunting you everywhere. We have to flee the city right now. The fat man's eyes bulged wide, the flesh on his cheeks jiggling violently, his eyeballs nearly popping out of their sockets. Flee the city? Head into the wilderness zone? Have you lost your mind? The place is swarming with mutant beasts. Are you, a mere F-tier archer, running out there to deliver yourself as prey? Jin pulled his arm free and turned toward the old wooden cabinet in the corner. He picked up the broken black bow, then dragged a dust-covered rough leather quiver out from under the bed, holding more than a dozen rusted iron arrows. My mother needs vast sums of money for advanced cold toxin suppressant potions in the later stages of her illness. Jin slung the quiver around his waist, his voice flat and emotionless. I could take that dog Zhang Kuang's life anytime I please. But first, I'm heading into the wilderness to hunt beast cores and earn enough money for her medicine. The fat man swallowed hard, staring into Jin's unervingly calm eyes, knowing no amount of persuasion would change his mind. He gritted his teeth and spun to dash outside. Wait 10 minutes for me. I'll grab my gear from home. If death's waiting, this fatty will face it alongside you. 10 minutes later, beneath the dim dusk glow, the two slipped through several hidden alleyways and reached the south gate of Jiangxing. The towering steel city wall loomed like a dormant colossus, sealing humanity's safe zone off from the abyss wilderness beyond. Blinding white floodlights blazed at the gate, while a squad of fully armed watch army soldiers inspected every hunter's credentials one by one. The air reeked of pungent machine oil, mixed with a faint metallic blood scent drifting from the wilderness. Wang Fuguei held a battered round wooden shield in his left hand, a chipped machete dangling from his right, nervously rubbing his thighs nonstop. Jin, my newly awakened tier earth barrier hasn't been tested once. The fat man wiped sweat from his forehead, eyeing the menacing mercenaries all around with unease, his back soaked through with perspiration. If we run into a powerful beast later, this flimsy wooden shield won't even block a single blow. Block it or break it. Tanks must hold their ground. Chen Jin did not glance back once. Their turn came to step up to the checkpoint. The gate guard took their electronic identity documents and swiped them across the scanner. Their awakening stats instantly popped up on the screen. The guard's brows knitted into a tight knot the moment he read the display. An F-tier archer and a newly awakened tier tank. The soldier lifted his head, staring at them as if they were already corpses, shaking his head repeatedly. Two green high school kids, not a single damage dealer or healer between you. And you dare charge into the wilderness zone. Several scar-faced mercenaries queued behind them burst into loud mocking laughter. Hey, two brats. The wilderness isn't some child's game. A burly mercenary carrying a spiked mace pointed at the broken bow slung across Chen Jin's back, grinning to reveal yellow-stained teeth, spittle flying everywhere. That busted scrap of a bow can't even pierce a wind-blade wolf's hide. Run home to your mothers and drink milk. Chen Jin turned his head, his pitch-black eyes locking coldly onto the brute. No rage burned in his gaze, only the detached indifference of someone staring at dead meat. The mercenary's mocking smile froze instantly. Beneath that icy stare, a chill crept up the back of his neck, sweat seeping uncontrollably from his grip on the spiked mace. Officer, if our paperwork checks out, may we pass? Chen Jin pulled his gaze away and tapped the checkpoint countertop. The soldier sighed and slapped their documents back onto the surface. Your papers are valid. But I warn you, once you cross this gate, your lives are your own responsibility. If you die out there, the city defense army won't even bother collecting your bones. Thanks for the warning. Chen Jin snatched the documents and strode past the warning line. The fat man hunched his shoulders, clutching his wooden shield and scurrying after him. After traversing the long alloy tunnel, the two stepped fully outside Jiangqing's protective energy barrier. A stretch of dark crimson wild woodland unfolded before their eyes. The sky was smothered by heavy lead gray clouds, oppressive enough to choke the breath out of anyone. The ground soil bore an eerie, deep red hue, as if soaked in endless blood for years on end, soft and squelching underfoot. Twisted, grotesque trees grew all around, their black trunks studded with sharp, barbed thorns. A cold wind swept through, carrying a fetid rot stench and the violent, chaotic aura of abyss source energy. Wang Fuguwei had barely walked a few steps when nausea churned violently in his stomach. Ugh, what is this reek? Worse than the South District waste treatment plant. The fat man clamped a hand over his nose, sweat coating his palms, holding the wooden shield tight to his chest as he walked ahead of Chen Jin to scout the path. Chen Jin, however, reacted entirely differently. The second he set foot in the wilderness, he even drew a deep, satisfying breath of the murky air. Host detected within abyss radiation zone. Indestructible immortal physique stimulated. Vitality +2, bone toughness +1, toxin resistance +1. Faint warm currents swirled through his bloodstream, bringing faint tingling sensations across his body. Chen Jin clenched his fist. His knuckles popped in a rapid string of crisp cracks. The lethal radiation everyone fled from was an endless supply of potent, nourishing tonic to him. He needed no protective gear whatsoever. Even bare-chested trekking through this wilderness, his body would automatically convert all toxins into strength fuel. Fatty, pick up the pace. Night will fall completely soon. Chen Jin unslung his broken bow, gripping it in his left hand while his right hovered beside the quiver's edge. Brother, I want to hurry too, but these thorny vines keep stabbing my feet. You didn't even bring antidote potions. If one beast bites us, we're both finished. The fat man wore a miserable grimace, hacking wildly at obstructive weeds with his chipped machete. The two trekked roughly 2 kilometers deep along the woodland's edge. Light had faded entirely all around them. Only a handful of mutated fungi glowing faint blue dotted the grass. A deathly silence hung heavy, broken only by the crunch of dry twigs snapping beneath their feet. Suddenly, a dull scraping sound rumbled from the bushes ahead. Rustle, rustle, as if some colossal beast was rubbing its flesh against rough tree trunks. Chen Jin halted his steps, his right hand snatching an iron arrow from the quiver in an instant and knocking it to the bowstring. Stop! Raise your shield. Chen Jin's voice was low and frigid. Every inch of fat on Wang Fuguwei's body stiffened, his legs rooted to the ground as if weighed down by lead. He followed Chen Jin's line of sight, trembling as he peered into the blackness ahead. 2 scarlet points of light slowly ignited deep within the thick grass. Moments later, a black beast as large as a small bulldozer stepped forth from the shadows. Its entire body was encased in thick black mud armor, its back lined with stiff bristles as sharp as steel needles. Two curved fangs half a meter long jutted from its jaws, still draped with shreds of unknown creature's flesh. Tier 1 Mutant Beast, Ironhide Wild Boar. Though low tier, its rock-hard hide repelled blades and bullets alike. Ordinary hunting squads would struggle greatly to take one down. Roar. The Ironhide Wild Boar unleashed a deafening roar, exhaling a cloud of fetid white mist. Its scarlet eyes locked rigidly onto Wang Fugaway, standing at the front, its massive front hooves scraping frantically at the crimson mud in agitation. The dull thud of its stomps sent faint tremors rippling through the ground, mud flying everywhere. A frigid chill shot straight up Wang Fugaway's spine from his heels to the crown of his head, his scalp prickling with terror. His arms shook violently, the wooden shield in his grasp creaking and groaning with every tremor. BB Big Black Pig. The fat man's teeth chattered so hard he could barely form words. The next second, the Ironhide Wild Boar dipped its head, bared its razor-sharp fangs, and charged forward at full gallop. Boom, boom, boom. It barreled toward the fat man like an out-of-control heavy armored vehicle, a violent stinking wind billowing in its wake. Weeds and wrist-thick tree branches in its path snapped instantly, splinters flying everywhere. Staring at the charging ferocious beast, the flesh on Wang Fugaway's face jiggled, and he screamed in despair. "Jean, it's coming straight for me. My shield won't hold." Wang Fugaway's voice cracked, his legs wobbling uncontrollably. He held the battered round wooden shield shakily before his chest, swaying left and right, able to hear the bones in his arms rattling with tremors. A scorching, foul-smelling gust of wind slammed into him, stinging his eyes shut. The Ironhide Wild Boar's massive hooves churned the crimson mud wildly, rolling forward like an out-of-control heavy road roller with thunderous rumbling. A cold glint flashed across Chen Jin's eyes. Common sense in the high martial world dictated that when an archer faced a melee mutant beast, the first instinct was always to activate a speed boost skill and create maximum distance. Kiting, using agile footwork to wear foes down, was the unbreakable survival rule for fragile bow users. Who in their right mind would engage a ton-heavy Ironhide Wild Boar in point-blank melee? It was no different from voluntarily shoving one's head into a meat grinder. But Chen Jin intended to do exactly that. Instead of retreating to create space, he slammed his left foot forward, stepping firmly in front of Wang Fugaway with his broad shoulders taking the full brunt of the incoming charge. Bang! Chen Jin clamped a hand over the fat man's shaking shoulder and hauled the 200-pound mass behind himself in one sharp tug. He did not even draw the short blade hanging at his waist. He simply stood unflinching, his bare chest exposed directly to the pair of half-meter razor fangs. A bloodthirsty glint flickered in the Ironhide Wild Boar's scarlet pupils. In its simple, brutish mind, the tender human before it was barely enough to fill a single gap between its teeth. Boom! A deafening dull crash exploded across the crimson wilderness. Mud billowed outward, and the violent shockwaves sliced through all barbed weeds at their roots, sending splinters swirling through the air. Wang Fugaway covered his head and crouched on the ground, squeezing his eyes shut, unable to bear witnessing Chen Jin being crushed to a bloody pulp. Yet the expected sound of splintering bone never came. Instead, a deep, resonant metallic clang rippled through the air. It sounded as if a 1,000-gene sledgehammer had smashed head-on into a solid steel gate. Ow! The Ironhide Wild Boar let out a distorted, pained squeal. Its massive frame, capable of smashing ordinary city walls, ground to an abrupt halt the instant impact landed. The next moment, as if it had collided with an immovable iron tower standing for 10,000 years, the beast was sent staggering backward 3 or 4 heavy steps. Its 4 thick black hooves carved deep furrows into the mud as it slid, churned muck flying everywhere. Chen Jin remained rooted in place, not shifting a single footprint. He glanced down at his chest. The coarse cloth tunic had been torn open by the sharp fangs, leaving a faint pale indentation on his skin. In the split millisecond the mark appeared, a streak of dazzling golden light flickered and vanished. Post-sustained charge impact from Tier 1 Mutant Beast. Indestructible immortal physique activated. Defense plus 15, bone density plus 10, max vitality plus 20. Scorching warm currents surged wildly through his chest, faint tiny cracks echoing from his bones, power multiplying within every muscle fiber. A cold, ruthless smirk tugged involuntarily at Chen Jin's lips. This beast's savage charge hit far harder than the steel pipes wielded by the city thugs. This sensation of growing exponentially stronger simply by taking blows head-on was utterly addictive. Hiding behind him, Wang Fuguei heard the commotion and pried one eye open tremblingly. At the sight unfolding before him, the fat man's jaw dropped wide enough to fit an ostrich egg hole. Jie Jin. He rubbed his eyes hard, wearing an expression as if he'd seen a ghost, not even noticing his wooden shield slip from his grasp and clatter onto the mud. You're not crushed? Wait, the boar's backing off. What kind of freak are you even? How could an F-tier squishy archer possess a physique like this? Even the heavy armor shield warriors at Jiangqing No. 1 High, who soaked in expensive medicinal baths every single day, would never dare take an ironhide wild boar's full charge head-on with nothing but their chest. Chen Jin had no time to spare for the fat man's existential shock behind him. Strike while the foe is wounded, deliver the killing blow. The word mercy had never existed in his code of conduct. The ironhide savage hog shook its dizzy massive head, thick panting billowing white mist. It had not fully recovered from the concussion. Chen Jin pushed off the ground, shooting forward like a black arrow loosed from a bow. One stride carried him flush against the hog's snout. He lifted his right hand, the rusted heavy arrow already knocked steady on the string of his broken black bow. Roar! Sensing mortal peril, the savage hog went berserk, rearing its tusks to strike back, charging blindly with bloodshot eyes. Too late. Every muscle in Chen Jin's arm bulged, blue veins coiling like tiny serpents up his forearm as he drew the weighty black bow to its full tension. The cold iron arrowhead pressed flush against the thickest, hardest black mud plating covering the hog's forehead. Zero distance between them. Other archers prized hitting a target 100 paces away, sniping from afar. Chen Jin fought differently. He pressed the arrowhead straight to his foe's skull and unleashed his power point blank. Gray-black mist swirled furiously around the arrow, carrying a deathly aura that sent a shudder straight through the soul. This was the unique law power of eternal erosion. Die. A cold, emotionless word fell from Chen Jin's lips, and he released his fingers in an instant. The resonant hum of the snapping bowstring cut through the silent thicket like a reaper's death knell. Carrying crushing wind pressure that rent everything in its path, the heavy iron arrow pierced the supposedly impenetrable thick mud plating without resistance. Crack! A sharp splintering sound carried on the night breeze. The unbreakable iron hard hide crumpled like fragile soda cracker, instantly spiderwebbed with countless fissures. The rusted arrowhead bored deep into the hog's solid skull. Squelch! Black-red blood geysered from the arrow's blood grooves, spraying over 2 meters into the air. The rain of blood splattered onto the dark red earth, hissing with a teeth-numbing corrosive sizzle. Every blade of weed that touched the toxic blood withered to ash on contact. The ironhide savage hog let out a shrill wail that echoed across the wilderness. It brimmed with unspeakable terror and agony, shaking leaves loose from every surrounding tree. The iron arrow had not fully pierced its brain core, yet this fate was 10,000 times worse than an instant headshot. For eternal erosion had activated. The thick flesh surrounding the wound blackened, festered, and dissolved before their very eyes. Blood gushed endlessly, its life force draining rapidly like a punctured rubber ball through the bloody gash. Its colossal frame crashed to the ground, sending mud flying waist-high. For massive hooves thrashed and convulsed madly in the mire, desperate to stand. Every spasm sent waves of foul black toxic blood sloshing outward. The overpowering, irreversible erosion force sapped all its strength, trapping it in perpetual bleeding and crippling weakness. Chen Jin watched the giant beast thrash in despair beneath his feet, slowly lowering his broken bow. He did not step back even half a pace, letting droplets of the splattering black blood land on his arm. The toxic fluid seared his skin with a sizzling hiss. Yet the next heartbeat, a golden glow welled up beneath his skin and devoured the toxin entirely. Toxin intrusion detected. Indestructible divine physique activated. Toxin resistance +5. This ironhide savage hog, a nightmare rookie mercenaries dreaded, now lay helpless like livestock pinned to a butcher's block. It could only wait in endless agony for its life force to bleed dry. In the underbrush a short distance away, several low-grade windblade wolves drawn by the scent of blood poked their heads out. At the sight unfolding before them, they did not dare whimper, tucking their tails and fleeing deep into the darkness. Seeking benefit and avoiding harm was an instinct carved into every beast's bones. They caught a fiendish, brutal aura emanating from the human youth far more terrifying than any abyss fiends. Wang Fugui collapsed onto the mud, his mind completely blank. He scrambled over on hands and knees, staring at the massive creature gasping its last breaths. Then he twisted around, dumbfounded, staring at the plain, half-snapped black bow in Qinjin's grasp. The deep bloody hole in the hog's mud plating still oozed black blood nonstop. Qinjin released the bowstring. The heavy arrow tore fully through the hog's forehead, unleashing a shower of black blood that exploded as Wang Fugui screamed. Ajin, you shot straight through its iron hide? That power can't be normal. Wang Fugui's voice cracked like a duck whose neck had been squeezed tight. He cowered in the rear, clutching his tattered wooden shield so hard his knuckles whitened, cold sweat soaking through the back of his clothes. Before him, the ironhide savage hog, bulky as a bulldozer, thrashed its enormous head wildly. A single rusted iron arrow jutted dead center from its forehead. Black-red monster blood gushed down the grooves, hitting the dark soil and releasing acrid white smoke as it corroded the ground. Quit squawking and watch closely. Qinjin did not retreat an inch, even finding leisure to shake out his aching right wrist. The ironhide savage hog was not dead yet. Mutated by constant abyss radiation, beasts like this possessed terrifying vitality. Even if their bellies were split open, they could stuff their intestines back inside and keep charging. Roar! The hog unleashed a deafening bellow, digging 2 deep craters into the earth with its hind hooves, lowering its head to skewer the human before it with its fans. But the split second it lunged forward, gray mist burst violently from the arrowhead. Like thick ink spilling into clear water, the law power of eternal erosion raced through its bloodstream to saturate its entire body in an instant. The hog's charging movement seized up abruptly. The ferocious speed it prided on vanished as if its spring had been snapped, slowing to a jerky, lagging crawl. Permanent slow debuff activated. How may I calm this restlessness? Huff, huff, pure terror filled the hog's eyes. It strained to lift its front hooves, yet its limbs felt weighted down with 10,000 caddies of lead. At the wound's site, flesh blackened and dissolved visibly to the naked eye. The tough black mud plating proved as fragile as waterlogged paper against the corrosive toxin. 1 second. Half the hog's head rotted into black muck, revealing pitted, bleached bone eaten away by corrosion. 2 seconds. Rot spread along its spine to engulf its whole body. Its formidable vitality became nourishment for the rampant toxin, blood flooding out like a broken dam. 3 seconds. The 2-ton colossus did not even let out a final wail before its massive frame crashed to the ground. Boom. The moment it hit the earth, its flesh and bone dissolved entirely. A cold, stinking gust of wind swept over the spot, leaving nothing but a pile of foul black ash. From arrow strike to complete ashification, exactly 3 seconds. Wang Fugui stood rigid as a stone statue, wooden shield still raised in his hands. A wisp of black ash blew onto his plump cheek. He wiped it off, staring at the black powder on his fingers as his teeth chattered uncontrollably. It's just gone? Wang Fugui swallowed hard, his atoms apple bobbing laboriously. A first-order abyss beast, flesh and bone reduced to ash in 3 seconds. Qinjin ignored him. Inside his mind, the system's metallic alert chime blared nonstop in a stream of notifications. First-order abyss beast ironhide savage hog eliminated. Vital blood source energy acquired. Eternal erosion judgment complete. Target life signatures fully erased. Indestructible divine physique stimulated by abyss source energy. Short-term limit amplification triggered. Reward. Automatic physical stat growth rate doubled for 1 hour. Boom. A burst of blazing heat erupted in Qinjin's chest. The scorching current surged through his veins to flood every meridian and limb, hot enough to make him nearly cry out. A string of sharp pops echoed from his bones. His already dense muscle fibers compressed and stretched further under the force. Raw power rampaged unrestrained inside him. Qinjin clenched his left fist and threw a casual punch at thin air. Crack! The fist wind split the atmosphere, unleashing a sharp sonic boom. No source energy augmentation, pure physical explosive strength, more than doubled from before. Feels good. Qinjin twisted his neck, a bloodthirsty cold smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Taking damage made him stronger, slaying monsters yielded source energy crystals, and now killing even unlocked double stat amplification. This cheat ability was perfectly reasonable. Wang Fugui snapped out of his daze and scurried over to Qinjin's side with tiny hurried steps. He deliberately circled wide around the pile of black ash, afraid to touch a speck of it. Ajin, tell me the truth, what deadly poison did you coat those arrows with? The fat man lowered his voice, glancing all around with a guilty, skittish look. Did you blow every coin you own at the black market to buy that forbidden instant kill toxin? Shinjin glanced sideways at him. Think whatever you want. He had no intention of explaining the forbidden law of eternal erosion. No one would believe it if he told them, and revealing it would only bring him death. He would let the fat fool write it off as potent deadly poison. Holy hell, you actually dared buy that stuff. Wang Fuguei slapped his thigh hard, jiggling every roll of fat on his face. No wonder you dragged me deep into the wilderness. You were packing a one-hit kill weapon. The fat man heaved a long, relieved breath, planted his wooden shield on the ground, and stood a little straighter. You should have said something sooner. If I'd known, I wouldn't have been scared out of my wits. What are we waiting for? Let's go hunt more hogs. We can hunt more beasts, but you've got your core job to do first. Chen Jin shot him a glance. Core job? The fat man blinked blankly. Carry supplies, collect loot. Chen Jin strode over to the pile of ash, lifted his foot, and brushed away the top layer of cinders. A faint crimson glow glinted from deep within the residue. Chen Jin bent down and pinched a thumb-sized diamond-shaped crystal between two fingers. The Ironhide Savage Hog's source energy crystal. It was crystal clear, not a single scratch marring its surface. Other hunting parties would need chainsaws and heavy axes to hack open the hog's tough skull and retrieve the crystal, covered in gore by the end. For Chen Jin, the toxin dissolved all flesh and bone, leaving the crystal sitting like a ruby in sand, ready to be picked up. It's glowing. A perfect intact source crystal. Wang Fuguei's eyes lit up, all his earlier terror cast far aside, saliva nearly dripping down his chin. Look at this clarity and purity. On Jiangqing's black market, this'll sell for at least 5,000 alliance coins. 5,000 alliance coins. Enough to buy a high-grade cold toxin suppressant elixir, letting Lin Xiaolan get through the winter comfortably. Chen Jin flicked the red crystal. It arced through the air in a parabola. Wang Fuguei flailed both hands to catch it securely, tucking it deep inside the inner lining of his jacket, as if clutching a priceless treasure. Guard it well. Lose it, and I'll carve 2 caddies of meat off you to sell instead. Chen Jin's tone was flat, yet the threat hung heavy. Count on it, Ajin. The crystal stays safe as long as I'm alive. I've never seen this much money in my life. Wang Fuguei grinned, so wide his eyes vanished, slapping his chest repeatedly to swear his guarantee. Chen Jin paid him no more mind. Reaching back into his tattered cloth quiver slung over his shoulders, he pulled out another rusted heavy arrow. Left hand gripping the bow, right hand knocking the arrow. Chen Jin lifted his gaze, past the nearby brush, toward the deeper, blacker reaches of the wildwood. The scent of blood grew thicker on the wind. The hog's death wail earlier had clearly alerted every other predator in this zone. Rustling friction sounds echoed faintly from the grass all around. Pairs of greedy beast eyes of varying colors lighting up in the darkness. Perfect timing, saves me the trouble of tracking them down. Chen Jin let out a cold snort, killing intent blazing tangible fire in his pupils. The 1-hour double amplification buff had begun its countdown. He would not waste a single second of monster farming efficiency while it lasted. His mother's medicine required more funds, and he himself needed far more injury and kills to complete his physical evolution. Chen Jin stepped firmly over the pile of black ash, striding deeper into the thicket. Fatty, quit dawdling and secure the crystal. Today, we're striking it rich out here. Ajin slowed down. Wait for me. He hoisted his battered wooden shield high, stumbling through muck and mud to catch up with Chen Jin's pace. Night fully blanketed the wilderness. Dense treetops blocked out every last glimmer of starlight, and the air reeked of cloying, nauseating blood. For the next 2 hours, the outer woodlands south of Jiangqing city gates became the stage for a brutal, one-sided massacre. Chen Jin knew nothing of stealth, nor hit-and-run kiting tactics. He crunched dry branches underfoot deliberately, making loud noise to draw lurking predators straight to him. A 3-meter-long shadow leopard pounced down from the canopy, razor claws aiming straight for Chen Jin's throat. Chen Jin did not even lift his head. He jammed the broken bough upward with his left hand, shattering every one of the leopard's fangs against the bow's spine. Next, he snatched a rusted iron arrow in his right hand and drove it straight through the leopard's jaw. Black mist burst forth instantly from the wound. The shadow leopard let out a gurgling whine, thrashing on the ground for less than 2 seconds before its flesh and bone melted into a puddle of black sludge bubbling with stinking foam. Only a single clear low-grade crystal rolled into the grass. At first, Wang Fuguei would scream in fright every time an abyss beast lunged out, darting wildly behind his shield with jelly-like weak legs. But after witnessing the identical slaughter over a dozen times, the fat man went completely numb. He could not even figure out what point there was to holding the wooden shield anymore. Chun-Jin moved like a human bulldozer, facing down hard-shelled beasts, venom-tailed serpents, and swarms of blood-sucking bats alike. So long as the iron arrow from his broken bow nicked even a tiny patch of skin, sniping off just a sliver of tail, no matter how minor the cut, the beast would react like ice tossed into boiling oil. Their wounds blackened and rotted across huge swathes, blood pouring endlessly. They would collapse after only a few stumbling steps, dissolving into lifeless black ash. Wang Fugui's sole routine now trailed directly behind Chun-Jin. Bend over, sift through ash piles, collect crystals, stow them in his clothes. The sequence flowed smooth as water, practiced so well it made him pity himself. "Ajin, our bags are stuffed full." The fat man patted his bulging jacket and whispered low. Chun-Jin halted, licking his parched lips. A stretch of open woodland lay ahead, over a dozen pairs of sickly green eyes fixed rigidly on them from the grass. A pack of low-grade windblade wolves, swift, sharp-clawed, the most troublesome social beasts on the wilderness fringe. If the clothes can't hold more, strip everything off to store them. Chun-Jin ASC shared the iron arrow back into his quiver, slinging the broken bow back over his shoulders as well. Barehanded, he walked straight toward the dozen snarling wolves. "Whoa, what are you doing? You're not even taking your bow." Wang Fugui's eyes bulged nearly out of his skull, yanking the shield up to cover his face in terror. "I've been shooting arrows this whole time. Time to try something new." Chun-Jin twisted his neck, a crisp string of pops echoing from every bone in his body. Seeing the human discard his weapon entirely, the alpha wolf let out a thunderous snarl, launching itself forward as a gray blur. Razor wolf claws sliced 3 wind blades through the air, targeting Chun-Jin's face and forearms. Chun-Jin did not dodge or flinch. He even spread his arms wide on purpose, letting the 3 wind blades slice deep into his forearms. Sizzle. Blood welled instantly. Deep bone, deep gashes carved across Chun-Jin's arms, blood dripping down his wrists into the mud. "Ajin." The fat man's soul nearly fled his body, scrambling forward to try and help. Yet the next second, Wang Fugui froze rooted to the spot, mouth gaping wide enough to fit an apple hole. A brilliant dark gold radiance blazed forth from the wounds on Chun-Jin's arms. The sliced flesh, blood vessels, and fascia wriggled and wove back together in a fraction of a millisecond. Before a second drop of blood could fall, the bone-bone laceration sealed completely, not a faint pale scar left behind. The newly regenerated skin even glinted with a tough iron gray metallic sheen. Indestructible divine physique activated. Bone density plus 20, max vital blood plus 50, physical defense multiplied exponentially. The system alert boomed inside his mind. Chun-Jin closed his eyes and drew a deep breath, a wild, ecstatic grin spreading across his face at the explosive surge of power coursing through him. It was the supreme thrill of raw power surging endlessly within his frame. He snapped his eyes open, locking onto the alpha wolf still mid-leap through the air, a vicious sneer stretching his lips wide. "I've saved up enough strength, you'll be my punching bag." Chun-Jin pushed off the ground with his right leg, launching his body forward like an artillery shell. A half-foot deep crater caved in beneath his foot. He didn't unleash any fancy martial arts techniques, only a raw, brutal straight punch. Boom. His fist split the sound barrier with a shrill whistle, slamming dead center into the Windblade Wolf Pack leader's forehead. A deafening crack sent leaves showering down all over the forest. The calf-sized Windblade Wolf's head burst open like a watermelon struck by a sledgehammer, brain matter and blood splattering across the ground. The headless wolf carcass flew backward more than 10 meters, snapping 3 large tree trunks before finally skidding to a halt as a mangled heap of flesh. The remaining Windblade wolves cowered, tails tucked tight between their legs, terrified by the horrifying display of raw violence. They whimpered and scattered in every direction, too frightened to glance back at their dead comrade, vanishing without a trace in the blink of an eye. The wooden shield in Wang Fugui's hands clattered onto the muddy ground. He sprinted over, grabbing Chun-Jin's arm and twisting it back and forth to inspect him, staring as if he'd laid eyes on an alien creature he'd never seen before. "You're a self-healing archer, for God's sake. Why the hell would you charge straight in to let wolves sink their teeth into you?" The fat man was practically losing his mind beside him. Spittle flecked Chun-Jin's face as he clutched at his own hair and stamped his feet in frustration. What archer charges forward to throw their life away? Do you want your carotid artery torn clean out? Are you suicidal? Chun-Jin pulled his arm free, casually wiping wolf blood off his knuckles on his shirt. His tone is bland, as if discussing what to eat for dinner that night. How am I supposed to trigger my self-healing if I don't get bitten? Am I supposed to hoard this talent for the Lunar New Year? Wang Fuguei was left speechless, rolling his eyes in exasperation, feeling like every bit of high martial world knowledge he'd learned over a decade had just been trampled into the mud. Self-healers were supposed to hide at the back of a squad to preserve their lives, terrified of being grazed by a single monster's attack. This lunatic treated his self-healing ability like a passive tank buff, complaining the exotic beasts weren't tearing into him hard enough. Chen Jin paid no mind to the fat man's stunned, flustered state. The hour-long double-stat boost had worn off, yet he could clearly feel a fundamental transformation sweeping through his physical body. Even if he stood motionless and let a grand martial master slash at him with a blade, the man would never easily pierce his skin and flesh now. Vital energy surged through his veins like raging rivers, so abundant he felt an urge to punch straight through a city wall. Let's go. The low-tier exotic beasts here have been scared witless. We'll head further ahead to explore. Chen Jin strode out in the lead, leaving crisp footprints stamped into the hard crimson soil with every step he took. The pair threaded through dense woodland, the vista gradually opening up to reveal a rolling stretch of jagged rock mounds. Massive black boulders jutted out in uneven stacks, resembling natural tombstones that exuded a heavy, murderous aura. The moment they stepped into this zone, all light seemed to get swallowed whole. The wind died, and an eerie silence hung thick in the air. Wang Fuguei shuddered, exhaling a long cloud of white frost. He reached down to brush a handful of withered dead leaves beside him. They were biting cold to the touch, coated in a thick layer of hoarfrost that had formed out of nowhere. The ground soil was frozen rock hard, crunching underfoot with every step, an unnatural chill clinging to everything. This frigid climate had no place in the early autumn wilderness outside Jiangqing. Wang Fuguei hugged his wooden shield tight, his teeth chattering uncontrollably. He shakily grabbed the hem of Chen Jin's jacket, his voice trembling, calves cramping up with cold dread. Wait, Ajin, the temperature's all wrong. High-tier demonic beasts must be lurking here. Maybe we should retreat first. Wang Fuguei's teeth clacked together as he spoke, his voice quivering non-stop. He clutched his nicked wooden shield to his chest, feet stiff as if trapped in an ice cellar, inching backward. Thick hoarfrost carpeted every inch of the rock mounds, cracking with an uncomfortable grind under their soles. Frigid cold crawled up his trouser legs, turning the soft flesh on the fat man's cheeks a sickly blue. Retreat? Where do you two think you're running off to? A shrill, mocking laugh suddenly cut through the wind, like nails scraping glass, tearing apart the rock mound's deathly quiet. Shuffle, shuffle. Three dark figures stepped slowly out from behind the frost-covered boulders. They wore matching tight black night garments, blending seamlessly into the pitch-black wilderness. Each gripped a long saber glinting with icy cold radiance, thick black blood from unknown exotic beasts dripping steadily off the blades. Emblazoned prominently over their left chests was the mark of a snarling black venomous scorpion. Wang Fuguei's pupils shrank to pinpricks, nearly dropping his shield, his whole body trembling as if electrocuted. Black Scorpion Gang Death Soldiers. The lead brute bore a centipede-shaped scar, slicing horizontally across his cheek, stretching from the corner of his eye all the way down to his jaw. He slung his saber over one shoulder and sauntered to a stop 10 paces away from the two youths. He stared down at Chen Jin from his lofty height, twisting his lips into a cruel grin to reveal yellowed, rotten teeth. Kid, you've got some gall. You crossed the Zhang clan, yet instead of scurrying out of Jiangsheng with your tail between your legs, you dare wander out into this wilderness zone. The scarred man spat a gob of bloodied saliva, gazing at Chen Jin as if eyeing a slaughtered pig hanging from a meat hook. The Zhang clan master put a 10 million bounty on your head. My brothers and I camped outside the city waiting for you all day. I thought you'd be hiding in the slum sewers too scared to show your face. He flicked the flat of his blade, producing a crisp ding. Never imagined this useless trash would march right over here and offer his neck on a platter. We won't turn down such an easy payday, boys. Chen Jin said nothing. He stood perfectly still, fingers resting lightly on the string of his broken black bow. His eyelids drooped slightly, calm as if nothing was amiss, studying the three black, cloaked assassins before him. The three men exuded steady, sustained vital energy. Their footsteps landed on frost-dusted dead leaves without making a single sound. Most dangerous of all was the faint cyan source energy flickering along their saber edges, dense, solid, sharp enough to slice straight through the air. Following Chen Jin's line of sight, Wang Fugue caught sight of the source energy manifestation on their blades. The fat man's scalp crawled with terror, his legs buckling beneath him as he crashed onto the frozen mud, sending shards of ice flying outward. Externalized source energy, condensed saber chi, a gene. All three of them are Grand Martial Masters, top-tier assassins of the Grand Martial Master realm. His voice cracked completely, the desperate shout carried away by the bitter cold wind. He scrambled over to Chun Jin's feet, clinging tight to the hem of his trousers, tears and snot streaming down his face. We're done for. Grand Martial Masters could crush us like 2 ants. Run as far as you can, I'll cast Earthen Barrier to hold them off for you. Despite the insurmountable gap in combat power filling him with crippling fear, the fat man gritted his teeth, hoisting his battered wooden shield and stepping firmly in front of Chun Jin. Chun Jin glanced down at the trembling fat man. He lifted his right foot and gave the man a light kick to the rear, sending him tumbling behind the largest boulder nearby. Stay hidden. Don't make a sound. Chun Jin's voice was cold and hard as iron fished straight out of icy water. Not a single tremor, not a flicker of fear. Grand Martial Masters. Chun Jin sneered inwardly. These were elite enforcers from Jiangqing's underground factions. A few hours earlier, crossing paths with assassins of this caliber would have sent him teetering on the brink of death dozens of times over. But things were different now. Slaughtering over a dozen exotic beasts deep in the woodland had triggered a complete, rebirth-level restructuring of his body. He could feel blood burning with excitement in every vein, every cell and joint ravenously craving heavier blows and greater destruction. Exotic beast claws no longer satisfied him. Grand Martial Master Saber Chi, this was top-tier tempering material practically delivered to his doorstep. The scarred brute frowned irritably at Chun Jin's unruffled expression, an unprovoked surge of annoyance rising in his chest. He hated prey that refused to scream and beg for mercy before death. Run? Neither of you will draw a single breath leaving these rock mounds alive today. The scarred man waved a hand impatiently, his gaze turning ice-cold as thick killing intent erupted off his body. Strike. Hack this fat man to mincemeat and feed him to the wild hounds. He pondered a finger at Chun Jin and spat venomously. As for this great archer, chop off all 4 of his limbs, leave him barely clinging to life, and drag him back to young Master Zhang to collect our reward. Before the words fully faded, the 2 black, cloaked death soldiers behind him exploded into motion. They exchanged not a word, their figures blurring into 2 dark streaks. Crushing the hoarfrost beneath their boots, they charged forward carrying piercing cold and murderous intent. Their 2 long sabers crossed sharply midair. Boom. Pale cyan wind attributed source energy burst off the blades, condensing into 2 2-meter-long frigid streaks of saber chi. This was the signature killing technique exclusive to Grand Martial Masters, externalized saber chi that could slay targets from a distance. Sizzle. The saber chi tore through the air with an ear-splitting shriek. 2 deep trenches were carved into the frozen ground, ice fragments and dirt scattering everywhere. Striking left and right, they formed a perfect cross-execution formation, slicing straight for Chun Jin's neck and legs. Long before the chi drew near, the cutting wind pressure washed over him in waves. The loose bangs falling over Chun Jin's forehead whipped backward violently, the muscles of his face denting faintly under the sheer pressure. Ajin dodged fast. Hiding behind the boulder, Wang Fugue smiled, clamping both hands over his head and let out a desperate roar. Grand Martial Master Saber Chi was sharp enough to rival industrial laser cutters. Not to mention an ordinary archer with near-zero physical defense. Even the Ironhide Wild Boar, the sturdiest Tier 1 tank beast, would be sliced clean into 3 segments if it took this attack head-on. Dodge. Create distance? Those were the coward's rules for ordinary archers. The 2 saber-wielding assassins locked their eyes on Chun Jin, cruel grins tugging at their lips. In their eyes, this high school boy would be reduced to a pile of mangled flesh the very next second. Yet Chun Jin's next move left every single person present utterly stunned. Instead of scrambling backward to create separation like a typical panicked archer, he didn't even lift his broken black bow to attempt to block. Chun Jin loosened his grip, and the lead-heavy broken bow clattered onto the frost-covered ground beside his feet. He was completely unarmed. His hands hung loose at his sides, and he puffed out his chest sharply. Chun Jin planted his feet rigidly into the frozen soil, taking a huge stride forward with his right leg. He charged straight toward the 2 terrifying streaks of saber chi capable of rending metal and stone. Advancing instead of retreating. Like a maddened wild ox, he thrust out his bare, unprotected chest, and crashed headlong into the attack on purpose. The two death soldiers' pupils blew wide to their limits, shock flashing vividly in their eyes. Their hands gripping the sabers even stalled mid-swing for half a beat, thrown off by this illogical, bizarre sight. They'd killed countless people. They'd seen victims drop to their knees begging for mercy, turn tail and flee, and lash out in last-ditch counterattacks. But never in their lives had they seen a squishy archer spread his arms wide and let Grand Martial Master condensed saber chi carve straight into his chest. Had the kid lost his mind entirely? The scarred brute stood back, watching Qin Jin's suicidal moth to flame charge. The centipede scar across his cheek wrinkled as he threw his head back and let out unrestrained, mocking laughter. His cackles echoed across the frigid rock mounds, thick with scorn and disdain. A worthless archer thinks he can tank saber chi? He's begging to die. The scarred man's wild laughter still hung heavy over the cold rock mounds when the two streaks of solid pale signed saber chi, whistling as they split the air, crossed and sliced clean into Qin Jin's chest. Squelch! The sickening tear of flesh sent chills racing down spines. Blood bloomed like a crimson lotus mid-air, spraying outward violently. Scalding droplets splattered across the hoarfrost, dotting the white expanse with glaring red stains. Qin Jin's body lurched as if struck head-on by a speeding heavy freight train. His feet left the ground, and he flew backward like a fired artillery shell. Frigid gale rushed into his torn, open chest cavity. For a split second, Qin Jin felt his life force draining away like sand through an hourglass. His internal organs were shredded to a pulpy mess by the saber chi, and darkness crept over his vision. Yet no trace of panic crossed his blood-soaked face. On the contrary, a wild, reckless grin tugged at his lips mid-air. Crash! He slammed hard into a massive black boulder 2 men's height, standing more than 10 meters away. The rock cracked inch by inch under the brutal impact before collapsing with a thunderous rumble. A cloud of stone dust and ice shards buried Qin Jin's figure completely. Wang Fuguei froze solid behind his boulder. All he saw was the geyser of blood spraying through the air, his mind going utterly blank. Ajin! A raw, shattered scream tore out of the fat man's throat. He tossed his nicked wooden shield aside, bloodshot eyes blazing. Gripping his dull-edged machete tight, he charged the two black, cloaked death soldiers like a rabid wild boar, roaring at the top of his lungs. "I'll tear you bastards limb from limb. I'll fight you to the death." Only one thought raced through Wang Fuguei's mind. His brother was dead, and even if he perished today, he would sink his teeth into one of these monsters. Some fat pig getting in the way. One black, cloaked death soldier huffed a cold snort, not even bothering to lift his saber. He twisted his torso slightly, his right leg lashing out like a whip with a cracking sonic boom, slamming hard into Wang Fuguei's stomach. Boom. The 200-pound man flew backward far faster than he'd charged forward. Wang Fuguei crashed onto the frozen mud and rolled 7 or 8 times before grinding to a halt. He opened his mouth and spewed a mouthful of blood mixed with fragments of internal organs, staining the front of his jacket deep red. Agony blurred his vision in waves. He strained to push himself upright, raking 10 deep, bloody gouges into the mud with his palms. His legs too weak to obey his commands. The scarred brute slung his saber back over one shoulder leisurely, the thick flesh of his cheek twitching with smug satisfaction. "I thought he'd be some tough opponent. Turns out he's just an idiot who can't even dodge." Even heavy shield warriors wouldn't dare take condensed Grand Martial Master saber chi bare-chested. The death soldier who delivered the strike twirled his saber to flick blood droplets off the blade. "Boss." The strike felt hollow when it landed. "The brat's ribs and heart are definitely sliced to ribbons. Let's go cut off his head and head back to the city to claim young Master Zhang's reward." The scarred man nodded, crunching across the frost-covered ground toward the pile of collapsed rubble. He reached into his coat, ready to pull out a special leather sack meant for severed heads. When he stood less than 3 paces from the rubble mound, his footsteps ground to an abrupt halt. A blinding streak of dark gold light pierced through the cracks between the stone debris without warning. At first it was just thin wispy strands, yet in the blink of an eye it blazed like the rising sun, banishing all darkness within a dozen meters around the spot. A scorching tempest suddenly whipped across the frigid rock mounds. Warning: lethal penetrating trauma detected in host. Heart shattered, all ribs fractured. Vital signs approaching 0 threshold. Forbidden law, immortal indestructible, activating at maximum limit. Initiating mortal body reconstruction. Total vital energy doubled. Physical defense doubled. Strength surged by 100. Buried beneath the rubble, The two horrifying saber gashes cutting deep into Chun Jin's internal organs were stitching shut at a rate defying all biological logic. The dark golden radiance did not merely mend his wounds. It triggered a brutally aggressive genetic evolution. Chun Jin's muscle fibers, frayed and broken, twisted back together like taut steel cables, growing thicker and far tougher. The blood flowing through his veins deepened in hue, every circulation rumbling like thunder. His shattered ribs fused back together in an instant amid a chorus of crisp, cracking sounds. His heart, shredded to pulp by saber chi, resumed thunderous beating in a mere hundredth of a second. Thump, thump, thump. The heavy, resonant drumbeat of his heart echoed clearly through the thick stone debris, ringing out across the silent wilderness. The hoarfrost blanketing the boulders instantly vaporized under the terrifying heat emanating from his body, billowing upward in thick clouds of white mist. The scarred brute's face drained of all color, his hand clutching the leather sack, jolting violently. What's going on? That heartbeat. Is some monster trapped under this rubble? The two death soldiers behind him sensed something horribly amiss at once, raising their sabers and falling into defensive stances. They stared rigidly at the rubble pile glowing with blazing light. Boom. A deafening detonation shook the ground. Several thousand gene boulders weighing down the pile exploded into fine powder as if struck by buried dynamite. A raging torrent of source energy rippled outward as a tangible shockwave, sweeping across every inch of the terrain. All frost and stone shards covering the ground were sent flying by the blast. Amid billowing clouds of dust, a tall, upright figure slowly straightened to his full height. Chun Jin's rough linen tunic had been shredded into rags by the blade energy from earlier, hanging tattered around his waist. His bare torso was exposed to the frigid air. His physique was sculpted as if cast in solid bronze. The defined muscle contours looked chiseled by axe and blade, radiating an explosive, raw aesthetic of brute strength. The two fatal gashes that should have split his flesh down to the bone bore not a single scar now. A faint, chilling dark metallic gold sheen rippled across his unmarred skin. Wang Fuguei lay sprawled in the muck, bloodshot eyes bulging wide, his jaw agape enough to fit a fist. The searing agony in his chest slipped entirely from his mind, only one frantic thought raging through his head. Is this even something a human can do? Slashed to ribbons, yet instantly knit whole again. The two dead swordsmen who'd struck him even glanced down at their own palms, their gazes swimming with utter disorientation. They questioned everything they knew. They'd felt their blades slice clean through bone moments ago. How could this man stand before them unharmed? The scar-faced brute drew a sharp gasp, his eyes nearly popping out of their sockets. Cold sweat soaked the hand gripping his broadsword, and he stumbled half a step backward of his own accord. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Taking two fully manifested blade energies head-on would kill even an S-tier self-healing talent instantly. How could trash F-tier you still draw breath? Chun Jin paid no heed to his roaring. He lowered his head slightly, staring at his own fists brimming with annihilating power. He slowly unfurled his fingers, then clenched them tight in one violent motion. Boom. A shrill sonic boom split the air. He could feel his strength had doubled outright since moments before. Vitality surged through his veins like a breached river, a primal urge welling inside him to tear the very sky apart with his bare hands. He lifted a hand and casually brushed off the lime dust coating his shoulders. His ink-black eyes pierced the swirling dust, locking rigidly onto the three trembling Grand Martial Masters standing before him. This is the full might of a Grand Martial Master's attack. My apologies, now it's my turn. Chun Jin's voice cut through the dust, cold as a newly sharpened blade edge. At those words, the thick flesh on the scar-faced man's jowls twitched violently, blue veins bulging on the hand clutching his sword hilt. Quit your hollow theatrics. If I could kill you once, I can kill you 10 times over. He hoisted his long sword high above his head, pale cyan wind origin energy roiling once more. He loosed a far thicker blade energy crashing straight down toward Chun Jin's crown. The blade slash rent the air with a piercing shriek, whipping sheets of frost across the ground in its wake. Chun Jin tugged his lips into a brutal, bloodthirsty sneer. He made no move to retrieve his broken bow from the dirt, only bent his knees slightly and slammed his feet hard against the frozen earth. Crash! The ground caved inward, leaving a pit half a foot deep, stone fragments spraying outward like bullets. His figure blurred into a fleeting afterimage as he charged, his bare body smashing straight through the razor-sharp blade energy. The scar-faced man's vision blurred, and a brutal wall of wind pressure slammed full into his face. That speed isn't natural. The assassin standing to the scar-faced man's left recovered first, shouting as he raised his sword to slice horizontally across Qinjin's waist. The long sword streaked forward wrapped in cyan light, aiming to cleave him in two. Qinjin did not spare the blade a glance. His left hand shot out, clamping the assassin's wrist in an iron vice grip. His 5 fingers squeezed down hard. A crisp crack echoed out. The assassin's wrist crumpled completely, jagged bone shards piercing through his skin. The long sword clanged to the ground. "You enjoy cutting people?" Qinjin's voice held zero inflection. Before the assassin could let out a scream, Qinjin swung his right arm wide. He slammed a palm the size of a palm leaf fan square into the man's face. Thud! That single blow carried doubled, monstrous strength, unleashing a deep, thunderous boom in the air. The assassin's facial bones caved inward instantly, his features mashed into a bloody, unrecognizable pulp. A teeth-rattling snap sounded from his neck. His head twisted a full half-circle on his spine, jerking grotesquely to rest against his back. His 100-plus-pound body went flying like a tattered sack, rolling 30 meters across the ground before colliding with a dead tree trunk. He crumpled motionless in the mud, stone-cold dead. The remaining assassin watched his comrade get swatted nearly headless with one palm, terror splitting his mind wide open. This was no frail archer. This was a primeval beast wearing human skin. He scrambled around on all fours, sprinting across the snow as fast as he could, wishing he'd been born with extra limbs to run faster. "Do you really think you can escape?" Qinjin let out a cold scoff. He reached back into the quiver at his waist with his right hand and drew 2 rusted iron arrows. He did not bend to retrieve his shattered bow, only flicked his wrist sharply. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 streaks of black light tore through the night wind, whistling with the cry of death as they streaked forth. Fired purely by arm strength, the iron arrows flew faster than any loosed from a heavy war bow. Squelch! Squelch! Ah! The fleeing assassin crashed onto the frozen ground. The 2 arrows pierced clean through his left and right thighs, pinning him immobile to the earth. He scrambled to yank the arrows free, but the moment his fingers touched the shafts, a cloud of gray-black mist burst forth from the wounds. Eternal corrosion, its laws fully activated. The flesh on his thighs blackened and dissolved before his eyes, bearing jagged white bone and rotting blood vessels beneath. Blood gushed forth like a broken dam, spilling across the frost and releasing acrid white smoke on contact. My legs are melting. Help! Boss, save me!" The assassin thrashed wildly across the ground in agony, raking bloody gashes into the frozen dirt with his fingernails. He tried to channel his internal origin energy to suppress the toxin. Yet the instant his energy touched the black mist, it ignited like gasoline, accelerating the rot tenfold. His shrill, agonized screams echoed over the rocky wasteland, sending chills crawling up anyone's spine who heard them. Wang Fuguei huddled behind a distant boulder, covered head to toe in bloodstains, utterly transfixed by the sight. He clung to the rock's edge, his mouth gaping wide enough to swallow a fist. "Ajin, are you possessed by some ancient ferocious beast? You one-shot a Grand Martial Master with a single slap?" The fat man's voice trembled on the wind, indistinguishable between wild excitement and raw terror. Qinjin ignored the portly man's frantic shouting. He turned his head, his black eyes locking onto the scar-faced brute who'd stood frozen this entire time. Clang! The long sword slipped from the scar-faced man's grasp and clattered onto the stones. His legs buckled, and he dropped heavily to his knees amid the rubble, his teeth chattering nonstop. Run? He'd seen exactly what happened to his 2 partners. Fight! The Grand Martial Master blade energy he'd prided himself on couldn't even nick the other man's skin. One palm from Qinjin could snap a Grand Martial Master's neck clean through. Qinjin advanced unhurriedly, crunching over frost-crusted underfoot until he stood before the scar-faced man. He halted directly in front of him, staring down at the face contorted with pure terror. "The Zhang clan paid 10 million for my life? Do they truly have the coin to buy my life?" Qinjin lifted a foot and pressed the sole hard against the scar-faced man's chest. He slowly bore down with his weight, a mountain's worth of pressure crushing the man's ribcage, cutting off his breath entirely. Crack! One rib in the scar-faced man's chest snapped clean, the jagged bone piercing straight into his lung. The brute coughed up a mouthful of thick blood. He reached up with both hands, clinging desperately to Qinjin's ankle. He strained with all his might to shift that crushing foot, yet it stood immovable as a steel pylon rooted into the earth. "Brother, no, grandfather. We can talk this through. I'll give you all the money. Keep every last cent." Blood frothed from his lips as he wept, tears and snot smearing all over his face. The arrogant air of a cold-blooded assassin completely stripped away. Chen Jin's gaze remained icy, and he bore down with even more weight on his foot. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of 3 more ribs splitting in succession echoed through the silent night, a horrifying noise that pricked the skin. Fatty, come search him. See if he's carrying anything valuable. Chen Jin tilted his head and called out toward the boulder where Wang Fuguei hid. Wang Fuguei swallowed hard, grabbed his nicked, dull blade, and limped forward step by step. Staring at the scar-faced man bleeding out beneath Chen Jin's foot, he thought the whole world had gone utterly mad. A grand martial master, a figure who walked unchallenged through Jiangqing's underground black market, now groveling like a beaten stray dog. Chen Jin shifted his gaze away, bearing down harder with his foot, ready to crush the brute's skull outright. He'd never made a habit of leaving living witnesses. Sensing the shadow of death descending fully upon him, the scar-faced man's mental defenses crumbled to dust. Ignoring the searing, burning agony in his punctured lung, he wailed and sobbed at the top of his lungs. Spare my life. I'll tell you everything. I was only hired by the Zhang clan, and they've already sent men to seize your mother. At the words, seize your mother, Chen Jin's black pupils constricted down to pinpricks. Weila Zhang Zhi Yichang Feier Weijag Yer Tu Fa Fanzhang de Sa Fa Zhang Li Ti Shang Jizhu or Anzhao Ni Diaocho Zhang Danwei Shuhao Neri Bunsu Suang Yingshan Xiaoyu 2530 Good Ji Dan Dan Lo Balko Dunjir Derhua Nation Dubei Shiteng Tisher Fo and Jing de Danchu Danja Yer Chan Ho Shanglin Kan Dan de Xing Jinxing Wu Feng Probing Kubing Ho de Paiban Rusha. The air all around seemed to drain away in an instant, the temperature plummeting sharply. The iron-hard frozen earth beneath his foot split open in a web of stress fractures, the cracks spreading outward 3 meters in every direction with a constant creaking groan. The scar-faced brute lay prone on the stones, vomiting mouthfuls of blood mixed with fragments of internal organs, every line of his face screaming his desperate will to survive. He clung to Chen Jin's ankle as though clutching a lifeline, wailing nonstop. Young Master Zhang's face rotted half away, and the clan patriarch flew into a towering rage. He tracked your departure from the city and split his men into 2 teams. He sent the 3 of us to intercept and kill you in the wilderness, to bring your severed head back as proof. The second squad is led personally by the Black Scorpion Gang's second-in-command, marching straight to the slum district where your home is. The second-in-command brought over a dozen elite enforcers with him. The Patriarch's orders were to capture your gravely ill mother alive. He means to keep her breathing, and once you're captured, carve her flesh from bone slice by slice right in front of your eyes. Grandfather, ancestor, I've told you everything I know. This was all the Zhang clan's scheme. I'm nothing more than a dog doing a job for pay. Spare my worthless life. Chen Jin stood perfectly motionless, not a single tremor shaking his frame. He lowered his head, his gaze cold as thousand-year ice locked deep beneath the ocean. No flicker of emotion crossing his face as he stared at the scar-faced man. No furious shouts, no hysterical roars. He merely slowly raised his right hand, pressing his index finger and thumb lightly together. A wisp of gray-black mist seeped from his fingertips, condensing in the blink of an eye into a dancing ball of black flame. This was the manifested toxic fire of the eternal corrosion law. You took their money to do their dirty work. You ought to have accepted you might die mid-job. Chen Jin's tone remained flat and unchanging as he flicked his finger. The wisp of black flame streaked forward like a venomous snake catching the scent of blood, a faint dark light burrowing straight into the scar-faced man's forehead. The brute's entire body stiffened, a shrill scream tearing from his throat and reverberating across the silent rocky wasteland. Black mist erupted from his forehead, as if 10,000 flesh-eating ants burrowed into his brain all at once. His skin blackened and dissolved visible to the naked eye. The Grand Martial Master protective origin energy he'd prided himself on was as fragile as paper against this toxic flame, devoured the instant it made contact. Help! My head! The fire is burning my brain to ash. The scar-faced man collapsed onto his stomach, clutching his head and thrashing madly across the ice-strewn ground. His sharp fingernails raked deep, bone-deep gashes into his own face, yet he could do nothing to halt the rot seeping into his marrow. Blood gushed from all 7 apertures of his head, turning to foul-smelling black toxic water the second it hit the ground. Within mere heartbeats, the screams cut off abruptly. The scar-faced man's head rotted away into an empty hollow skull, his entire body melting into a puddle of acid foaming black sludge that seeped fully into the frozen dirt. A grand martial master, dead without a single intact bone left to bury. Wang Fugui huddled behind the distant boulder, having witnessed the one-sided slaughter in full, and swallowed a mouthful of blood-tainted saliva hard. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with a tattered sleeve, propping himself up on his dull blade as he limped over to Chen Jin's side. The fat man's round face, usually lined with petty, worldly shrewdness, burned bright red now, every line of flesh taut with rage. Ajin, those beasts won't even spare your sick mother. We march back and kill every last one of them. He slammed the blade's tip into the dirt, grinding his teeth so hard it sounded like they might shatter entirely. I don't care if I lose my life here today. I'll hack that so-called second-in-command to pieces. Chen Jin tilted his head and glanced at the fat man. This fellow was usually a coward through and through, his legs turning to jelly at the mere sight of a wind-blade wolf. Yet now he stood ready to charge blade in hand against the entire Black Scorpion gang. Keep your life for later. I'll handle the killing. Chen Jin looked away, kicking aside a stone coated in toxic blood at his feet. Several crystal cores from exotic beasts he'd slain earlier lay scattered across the ground, glinting enticingly under the moonlight. Given Wang Fugui's usual greedy nature, he'd stuff every scrap of this windfall into his pockets even with a blade pressed to his throat. But right now, the fat man did not spare the cores a single glance, gripping his blade and ready to sprint straight toward Jiangqing. We have no time to waste. Chen Jin grabbed Wang Fugui by the back of his collar, the surging river of vitality inside his body roaring to full power. The terrifying physical prowess granted by undying, indestructible body erupted in full force. He slammed his feet hard against the earth, caving the ground into another half-foot pit. His entire frame shot forth like a heavy arrow loosed from a bow, carrying the 200-pound Wang Fugui along as a fleeting shadow, sprinting at breakneck speed toward Jiangqing's south gate. The howling wind shrieked in their ears. Wang Fugui could only watch the trees on either side blur into indistinct streaks, the frigid wind lashing his cheeks like sharp knives. Chen Jin's speed was beyond comprehension. Each stride carried him more than 10 meters. Dead leaves and twigs beneath their feet, swept high into the air by the sheer force of his wake. The exotic beasts lurking in the darkness only caught a suffocating wave of murderous aura passing overhead, cowering flat in the grass, too terrified to make a sound. A wilderness trek that would normally take a full hour was crushed down to 15 minutes by Chen Jin's brute strength. The searchlight beams from Jiangqing's south gate came into view on the horizon. Night had fully fallen. The bustling downtown core blazed with neon lights, drowning the district in indulgent, lavish luxury. The southern slum district, however, was a forgotten pocket of darkness, even the dim yellow street lamps flickering on and off in the cold wind. Chen Jin and Wang Fugui evaded the gate guard's inspections, slipping quietly into the outer city through an abandoned underground sewage pipeline. They hugged the cold red brick walls, darting swiftly through a tangled maze of dilapidated alleyways. The air reeked of fermented sewage, acid, and acrid fumes from low-grade coal. No surveillance cameras operated here, nor did city defense patrols circle these streets. It was the most lawless, filthy no-man's land in all of Jiangqing. 2 streets still separated them from their small courtyard home. Wang Fugui suddenly skidded to a halt, yanking Chen Jin's arm and pressing his whole body tight against a shadowed wall corner. He poked half his head out, staring rigidly forward through the faint glow of a distant street lamp. The fat man's breathing grew ragged, cold sweat soaking the palm wrapped around his blade hilt. Ajin, there are lookouts posted at the courtyard gate ahead. 3 men total, all wearing Black Scorpion gang uniforms. The slum district was damp and shadowy, perpetually thick with the sour stench of rotting sewage. Chen Jin concealed himself in the dim glow of the street lamp's shadow, his gaze cutting through the night mist to lock onto the gate of his courtyard home. Beneath the flickering broken street lamp stood 3 men clad in tight black jackets. A snarling Black Scorpion tattoo was emblazoned across each of their chests. Their jackets were splattered with half-dried mud, each man clutching a bloodied broadsword, discarded cheap cigarette butts littering the ground at their feet. The blonde-haired guard took a deep drag of his cigarette, exhaling a murky smoke ring and grinning with lewd malice. The second-in-command brought over a dozen elite men inside with him. Capturing 1 sick old woman will be child's play. Young Master Zhang gave clear orders. Once we bring her back, we can do whatever we like with her. A short, stocky thug beside him split his lips wide, revealing a mouth full of rotten yellow teeth. If you ask me, Once the second-in-command finishes his business, we ought to head in and get a taste for ourselves. She's sickly, sure, but she's still got a decent figure underneath it all. The third burly sentinel joined in their crude jeering, tapping the flat of his blade against his palm. You've got some truly warped tastes. Still, I heard her husband was a martyr. I've bedded countless women in my life, but never a martyr's widow. Tonight we're in for a rare treat. Their vulgar, revolting words drifted on the night wind into the shadowed wall corner. Wang Fugui, hiding behind Qinjin, felt his eyes flood instantly with bloodshot rage. Blue veins bulged thick across the fat man's forehead, his gaze fixed murderously on the three beasts as his teeth ground together with a grating crunch. He hefted his dull blade, his chest heaving wildly, ready to charge out and fight them to the death. Qinjin shot a hand backward, clamping it hard down on Wang Fugui's shoulder. His 5 fingers formed an unyielding steel cage, pinning the 200-pound fat man firmly in place, unable to move an inch. Qinjin said nothing, his face calm as stagnant still water. Yet deep within his pitch-black eyes, a layer of frost capable of freezing marrow solid was steadily coalescing. With every obscene word that reached his ears, a fine crack split the brick beneath his feet, until the bricks could bear the weight of his fury no longer, crumbling entirely into red dust. He slowly lifted his right hand, reaching back into the rough leather quiver at his waist. His movements were unhurried and deliberate, like an elegant butcher meticulously selecting tableware, not making the faintest sound. 3 heavy crossbow bolts were knocked simultaneously on the string of his broken black bow. The muscles of Qinjin's arms bulged sharply, cyan veins coiling beneath his skin like venomous serpents. He drew the leaden-heavy broken bow back little by little, a teeth-gritting scraping sound grating through the air. The bow curved into a perfect full moon. Wisp after wisp of gray-black mist seeped soundlessly from his fingertips clutching the fletchings. As if endowed with sentience, the black fog wrapped tight around the 3 rusted arrowheads. An aura of stagnation and corrupt law power fully bloomed amid the night. Outside the gate, the 3 sentries laughed unrestrainedly, even haggling over how to split their loots later. They had no inkling the scythe of death was already pressed against their carotid arteries. All right, once I finish this cigarette, we'll head in to watch the fun. The blond man tossed his cigarette, but into a puddle and ground it viciously out with the toe of his shoe. The instant the embers died away, Qinjin loosened his fingers holding the fletchings ever so gently. No earth-shattering crack of arrows splitting the air, no sonic boom piercing the night. Wrapped in the legal power of eternal corrosion, the 3 bolts swallowed all wind resistance and noise entirely. 3 streaks of black light flashed through the darkness, too swift for even afterimages to register. Thud, thud, thud. 3 muffled sounds of flesh being sliced rang out at once beneath the silent street lamp. The blond man only felt a faint chill on his shoulder, as if stung by a mosquito. The other 2 felt minor twinges on their arms and cheeks, a single bead of blood splattering free from each wound. The iron bolts had not pierced their vital organs, merely grazing a thin layer of skin, before burying themselves deep into the blue brick wall behind them. The fletchings on the arrow tails trembled faintly against the wall, shaking clouds of mortar dust loose. The blond man froze, reaching down to touch the torn fabric of his shirt on his shoulder. His fingertips met a sticky, warm dampness. Damn it! Who's firing sneak attacks from the shadows? Flying into a rage, the blond man hurled his machete aside and opened his mouth wide to shout an alarm into the courtyard. He drew a deep breath, yet before sound could pass his vocal cords, disaster struck without warning. The black fog coiled within their wounds erupted violently, like ink dropped into boiling oil. A sickly metallic sweetness surged up the blond man's throat, and thick, fetid black blood gushed forth from his mouth. Within a thousandth of a second of contact with blood, the legal power of eternal corrosion had annihilated his vocal cords completely. The toxin stripped them of the ability to speak permanently. Ugh, gurgle. Terrified out of his wits, the blond man clutched his neck, eyes bulging wide, only able to produce a wheezing hiss like a leaky bellows. He glanced down at the gash on his shoulder. The scrape, no bigger than a fingernail, was blackening and festering at a visible rate. The flesh dissolved instantly into reeking black pus, as though doused with concentrated strong acid. The black sludge trickled down his arm, dripping into the puddles on the ground with a sizzling burn. Gurgle. The other 2 assassins clutched their cheeks and arms alike, thrashing madly in the muck like dying stray dogs. Their eyes brimmed with primal, soul-deep terror of death. The protective origin energy they prided themselves on as Grand Martial Masters was thinner than tissue paper against this law-tier toxin. It was devoured the moment it made contact, even feeding the poison spread. No heart-wrenching screams echoed through the alley, only the viscous squelch of flesh melting away. The blond man scrabbled frantically to tear off his shirt, desperate to halt the toxin creeping upward. But the moment his fingers touched the edge of the wound, the black pus crawled up his palm as if alive. His fingernails peeled off, his finger bones turned black, and chunks of flesh sloughed away one after another. Helplessly, he watched his chest cave inward, his internal organs oozing out as black slurry. The terror of watching his own body dissolve, while fully conscious, shattered his sanity completely. He lifted his head in despair, staring at the tall youth stepping slowly out of the alley's shadows. Chen Jin carried his broken black bow slung over his back, military boots crunching across the waterlogged muddy road. The street lamp stretched his shadow long, engulfing the three writhing assassins beneath its gloom. Chen Jin looked down at them from above, his eyes holding neither pity nor the thrill of revenge. Only the cold indifference of someone watching maggots by the roadside. He did not even bother delivering a finishing blow, simply standing with his hands behind his back, observing quietly. In the span of 5 breaths, the 3 battle-hardened Black Scorpion Gang assassins dissolved completely into mire, tormented endlessly without a voice to scream. Not a single intact shard of bone remained. Beneath the street lamp, only 3 puddles of acrid, reeking black sludge lingering, sizzling as they corroded the flagstones beneath them. Wang Fugue poked half his bulky frame out from behind a wall corner. Staring at the bubbling black puddles on the ground, his stomach churned violently, bitter bile rising to his throat. The fat man leaned against the wall and retched repeatedly before steeling himself to shuffle forward. He tiptoed as high as he could, terrified of letting even a speck of the toxic black sludge touch the soles of his shoes. Jean, this poison of yours, it's damn brutal. Saves us the trouble of disposing of the bodies entirely. Cut the chatter. Stay close behind me. Chen Jin took long strides, stepping cleanly over the puddles of black muck. He marched straight for the dilapidated wooden gate of his small courtyard, every step radiating sharp, deadly killing intent. The split-second Chen Jin's fingertips were about to brush the ajar gate. His movement ground abruptly to a halt. He twitched his ears, freezing in place, his gaze darting to the right side, separated by a single wall. The slum district should have been dead silent deep into the night. Yet from an abandoned dead-end alley next door burst a flurry of clashing metal. The shrill whine of long swords slicing the air, mixed with thunderous collisions of heavy blades. Sporadic sparks flickered in the night sky, piercing the mist of the rainstorm. A bone-chilling aura of frost origin energy drifted faintly through the air. Only high-rank sword cultivators could unleash such pure frosty sword chi. The frigid aura seeped outward, frosting a thin layer of white rime across the crumbling red brick wall beside Chen Jin in an instant. The temperature plummeted sharply. Chen Jin raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise crossing his dark eyes. He tilted his head toward the alley mouth illuminated by the street lamp and muttered to himself quietly. That's Su Qinghan's voice coming from next door. Why is she fighting members of the Black Scorpion Gang?